Ottawa.
Algonquin territory of the Anishinaabe people. This is City News, CIWW 1310 AM Ottawa and CJET 1011 FM Smiths Falls and the Valley. City News time, 9 o'clock.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, April 21st. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 3 degrees, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. After serving 3 terms on City Council, Knoxdale-Merivale Councillor and Board of Health Chair Keith Eglai is not going to run in the municipal election slated for October. With that story, here's City News reporter Alex Gouge.
Eglai says the decision was made while he and his wife were on a long-delayed vacation for their 30th wedding anniversary. After 12 years, the councillor now wants to spend more time with his family. He tells City News serving as Board of Health Chair throughout the pandemic was not exactly what he expected when he accepted the role at the start of the council term, and that was another factor behind his decision to not seek re-election.
Being the chair of public health, I was in the media a lot, and I was the spokesperson a lot of the times for different measures that we were recommending be put in place, whether it was masking or physical distancing, and so it was a lot of time, a lot of effort.
The councillor is also most proud of his work citywide with public health and the efforts he and the community took while responding to a tornado in September 2018. Eglai adds his priorities for the remaining term of council is to work with Ottawa Public Health to get back to providing its basic services that were put to the wayside throughout the pandemic. Alex Gouge, City News.
Now more with Councillor Eglai coming up shortly on the Rob Snow Show. City News time 9:01. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Rain on the way for most areas and will continue until about 8 o'clock tonight. The high today near 11 degrees and 4 for the low. Tomorrow we'll have varying amounts of sun and cloud, favoring the cloud at times. High near 12. For today, the high 11.
And right now, 3 degrees in Ottawa. It's 4 degrees in Smiths Falls. Russian President Vladimir Putin has tried to claim victory in the strategic port of Mariupol, Ukraine, even as he ordered his troops not to storm that last pocket of Ukrainian resistance along the Black Sea. Reporter James Longman has more.
As Russia's grip on Mariupol tightens, Ukrainian forces are holding on. They're dug in at their stronghold at the Azovstal steel plant. Russian President Vladimir Putin declaring victory there, announcing a halt to the Russian assault on the compound in an effort, he says, to save the lives of Russian soldiers. But he told his troops to seal off the plant. Officials think 120,000 civilians are still trapped in the city.
Now, Putin's order may mean Russian officials are hoping they can wait for defenders to surrender after they run out of food and ammunition. The number of electric buses joining the OC Transpo fleet this summer has been drastically reduced. What was to be 74 will now number 26. The update coming at Transit Commission as GM Renee Amilcar says the cost pointed out by the City Auditor General and the fact the pilot project for electric buses and how they perform in all Ottawa weather conditions continues. That delayed the larger complement from being delivered. Several high-profile firearm control groups want the federal government to drop the plan to offload the task of banning handguns to the provinces. They have written the public safety minister arguing the move will lead to a disastrous patchwork politically, legally, and in terms of public safety. The World Health Organization says the number of reported new COVID-19 cases worldwide fell 24% last week, but still number 5.59 million. The UN Health Agency says the number of newly reported deaths also dropped 21%. Now, provincial officials in Ontario say after Easter, Ramadan, and Passover, there is going to be an increase in case numbers in this wave 6, but it is not expected to be a spike. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
When the headlines say X,
he's got the Y.
it's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
You know, we are 4 months and 3 weeks into the year. 30% of the way through the year. And we haven't had one 20-degree day yet. For shame on you, Mother Nature. 17 degrees is the warmest it's been so far in 2022. Yeah, by this time last year, we had already had 4 20-degree days, and on one of those days, it had hit 24 degrees. Had a little heat wave there. And I'm looking at the super-duper long-range weather forecast. I shouldn't do this. Thoroughly depressing. The AccuWeather long-term, super-duper long-term.
Why do you do this to
weather
yourself?
forecast?
You should not do that.
It does not forecast 20-degree weather until the May 2-4 long weekend. Like another month of this.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I saw you were on the driving range yesterday.
Yep.
Right? But I've been golfing in April in Ottawa before.
Course opened a week ago this time last year. Already lost a week.
You've already lost a week, right? Yeah. It's like spring has been canceled. It's like just been canceled. I would like to talk to the groundhogs. To have a stern talking to some groundhogs. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. Great show coming up. Lots going on. Another city councillor has decided not to seek re-election. Keith Eglight, Knoxdale Maryville Ward, and he's been the city councillor for that ward since 2010, so a dozen years as the city councillor. He was a lawyer before that, and my gosh, he's had a lot on his plate as the city councillor in Knoxdale Maryville Ward. Tornadoes in 2018, his ward among the hardest hit parts of our region. For the last several years, he's been the chair of the Board of Health. So, I mean, nonstop COVID in his world. And most recently, the industrial accident, the explosion at Eastway tank, and the investigations ongoing there. So, a lot to talk about when Councillor Eglight joins us coming up just a few minutes from now. It is going to be a very different city council after the municipal election. We know there's going to be a new mayor. Councillor Eglight not running. Let's think about this. Councillor Eglight's not running. Councillor Harder's not running. Councillor Moffat is not running. Councillor Cloutier in Alta Vista Ward not running. Councillor McKenney is running for mayor, so that means no incumbent in Somerset Ward. Last I heard, Councillor Deans is still planning to run for mayor. Last I heard, I haven't heard otherwise. Her plan is to still run for mayor. Have you heard otherwise, David? I haven't heard otherwise. That's her plan. The last time Councillor Deans was on City News, it was with Sam LaPrade, and said, I'm even more motivated to run for mayor now. This was after she was removed from the Police Services Board in the dramatic day in city politics. But last I heard, she was planning to run for mayor, so no incumbent in that ward, if that's still the case. There's going to be a new council seat. I guess there's going to be a new ward called Barhaven East. And many of the other wards are actually going to have new names. I'm going to have to brush up on all the new names of all the wards and then, I guess, try to put the new faces to all the new ward names. It is a change election in Ottawa, this municipal election. It's a very important election. Will it be a change election for Ontario on June 2nd? We'll talk about that this morning. Our Ontario political panelists are back for another week. Lindsay Maskell and Andrew Brander with the Ontario election call now just a few weeks away. The big day, June 2nd. Lots of polling out this week. There are polls that would suggest this race is tightening up. This race is tightening up, and the Liberals are catching up to the Ford PCs. Doug Ford likes to call the Liberals the minivan party. The Liberals have been responding by saying objects in rearview mirror may be closer than they appear. There is also polling data out this morning that shows if the election was held today, the PCs would win it and win it in a landslide. with a massive majority government, even more seats than they have now. 80 plus seats. Have, I think 67 or something like that now in the legislature. So we're going to talk about that. We'll talk about Stephen Del Duca's promise to ban handguns. Del Duca is the Liberal leader. Not a lot of love for that election promise on banning handguns. Not because people are pro-handgun. It's just a lot of people don't think it'll do very much. Like the government is just going to, wave its wand, ban handguns, and the scourge of gun crime in the cities is going to go away. I don't even think too many liberals are buying that one. There are a lot of other election-related topics to get into. Doug Ford has made $10 billion worth of election promises, the pre-election goodie list. There's Highway 413 that would run through York and Peel and Halton. The lefties hate that. The environmentalists hate that. All the local councils are opposed to it. But the Ford government's going to build it anyway. Get it done. We're going to hear a lot about that highway during the election campaign. Randall Denley's on our show this morning. He writes about the Ford government for Post Media, and he had a column in the Post this week, in the National Post, about the hapless opposition in Ontario and how both opposition leaders really need to up their game. Andrea Horwath, Stephen Del Duca. This is Andrea Horwath's fourth election as leader of the New Democrats. Fourth election. She will not get a fifth kick at the can. You have to think this is it for her. Winner, you're out. And, as for Stephen Del Duca, I mean, he might be lucky if he wins in his own riding. According to Randall Denley's column this week. We'll ask him about it. And Professor Elliot Tepper will join us this morning from the Norman Patterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University. He will run down what he thinks are some of the big world news stories of the week. Obviously, the war in Ukraine continues to dominate the international headlines. We'll talk about the Satan missile test. A new missile tested by Russia this week. But also, there's the election in France is on Sunday. I don't think it's looking too good for Marine Le Pen. She's taken money from Russian banks. That's not really a good look, is it? Is that what you want in your president right now? Trump back in the news this week with all of these Republican hopefuls, midterm hopefuls, and it's like they have to make a pilgrimage to Mar-a-Lago and kiss Trump's ring and try to get his endorsement. It's all very strange. And Boris Johnson fighting for his political life, Prime Minister of the UK, with a vote on his future happening today in the British House of Commons, where the MPs actually show up in person and have votes. What a concept. On the Talkback Hour today, Pierre Poilievre and freedom. Freedom. Pierre Poilievre's call to action in the Conservative leadership race is freedom. Freedom. He says he wants to make Canada the freest country in the world. He wants to make Canadians the freest people on earth. He's attracting big crowds, especially younger voters. What do you think Pierre Poilievre means when he says he wants to make Canada the freest country in the world? What does that mean to you when he says that? And how could Canada, let me ask you this, how could Canada be more free than it is now? How could Canada be more free than it is right now? How could you be more free than you are right now? We do the Talkback Hour every morning between 10 and 11 o'clock. And the call-in line is 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Feel free to call on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
The sun's calling, change with the warning. I won't win anything if I give everything.
I was so excited when I found out that I was given this grant to be able to make this concert, because I knew it was going to be the first opportunity that I was able to play these songs for others. You know, this album was recorded really, truly in isolation. Like everybody else, we were locked down for a bit. So you're going to see, I think, the joy of playing live, of being together.
For me, as someone who owns a business in Ottawa that's directly working with music, I own a recording studio, it is important because it gives a sense of confidence in terms of having support from a lot of different places. We all know in Canada, there are all kinds of city, provincial, and federal people who provide funding for artists, and just seeing how invested Ottawa is and expanding the reputation of Ottawa as a music and entertainment city, running a business in that city, it makes you just feel better that someone's going to support you, help you, and have your back.
Well, firstly, I'm seeing friends that I haven't seen in 2 years, so that is kind of stabbing me in the heart a little bit, but I'm also just so happy to be able to make art with all of these friends again. And I've been treated like an absolute rock star from the moment I just kind of knocked on the door and said, hey, can I unload my gear? Everybody's so helpful, and you're just used to kind of dragging all your stuff around, and it's such a hard business to be in. So this is a dream come true for any local artist who gets to participate in a series like this.
Oh, I feel like I need to keep pinching myself. It's an amazing experience and opportunity for us, so thank you so much. It's been a long couple months. Our last show was in December. This is the first time we've actually been in the same room together since. So it's really an amazing opportunity for us, and the beautiful theater, and to have Rogers here, and thank you, Mike, and so it's a dream come true.
I'm here with one of my best friends, Alex, and we haven't performed in almost 2 years because of COVID. And it feels really good to be back on a big stage like Meridian, and I'm really honored that you guys invited me here today.
Having an organization that lets the artists do their thing with such a range of styles and influence, and to kind of have that ability to meet the public and to meet the people who would listen to them, can't be overstated. So super excited about it. I know a lot of musicians in town and a lot of music lovers in town who are really excited about it too. So I mean, it's an event in which there's talk, you know, there's a lot of buzz around it, and I wouldn't be surprised if it goes on for a long time and does a lot of great things for local musicians and connecting them with the listeners that love them.
The opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
He's been a city councillor for 12 years, representing Knoxdale-Maryville Ward, but he will not run in this year's municipal election. Keith Egli joins me this morning on City News. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good, thanks.
Good. You feel liberated?
I don't know if liberated is the right word.
Free freedom. Everybody wants more freedom these days,
but it definitely feels like it was the right thing to do on the right time.
All right. Why now?
Well, you know, I've been on your show quite a bit over the last number of years, and you know, it's been quite a 4 years. You know, it started off with a tornado in my ward, and building back the community after that, and then we, in my role as chair of public health, we entered into the pandemic. So it's been a very, very busy 4 years, and I recently was able to finally go on a vacation with my wife that had been delayed for a number of years to celebrate our 30th wedding anniversary, and we're in our 33rd year of marriage, so that gives you a sense of how long the delay was.
Yeah.
And it gave me time to pause, to think, and you know, I put 12 years in, and I decided I want to spend more time with my family, and take a bit of a break from the political world. So it just seemed like the right time and the right decision.
Good for you. Good for you. Okay. You mentioned the tornadoes, the afternoon, September 21st, 2018. Neighborhoods in your part of the city have just been devastated by a series of tornadoes. What do you remember about that day?
Well, I remember feeling very lucky because the tornado touched down on my street, but just a few homes away from mine. So my home was left standing and intact. And then I just, a sense of almost awe, and not in a good way, as I left my home and I went up the street and around the corner. And as I moved further into the neighborhood, I saw the devastation get worse and worse. Damage to the homes, people just out in front of their homes, just shocked and crying. But I also remember in the days following that what an incredible sense of community. Churches, community associations, volunteer groups, all came together and helped out neighbors, cleaned up their yards and their homes, prepared food for those who still didn't have power, all those things. So it was an awful experience, but what a great sense of community came out of that.
And when you look at those same homes that were devastated now 3.5 years ago, what does it look like now? Are most people, have they moved beyond that? Do they have their lives back together now? What's your sense of it now?
So most of the homes, not all of them, there's one or two that I'm aware of that still are not fixed or rebuilt. People are in a better place, but I can tell you when the skies get dark and the winds pick up, people look up in the sky and they're concerned. One of the areas that got hit was Trent Arlington and Arlington Woods, and their claim to fame, if you will, as a community was their homes were built right into a pine forest, and the devastation that happened to the trees. It will take decades for that community to look like it did before the tornado. Okay. So there's still very visible reminders in the neighborhood about what happened on that day.
The tragedy at Eastway Tank, what are you hoping comes of these investigations? What do you want to know?
Well, I think what everybody wants to know is what happened, what went wrong, and that's the start, of course. The more important issue is putting steps and procedures in place that sort of thing doesn't happen ever again. So I think that's what everybody's waiting for, that blueprint of what went wrong and how can we fix it and get any of those, as I say, those steps or changes in legislation or whatever's necessary, get that done as soon as possible so this sort of thing doesn't happen again.
What has it been like being the chair of the Public Health Board these last few years?
You're asking me all the positive questions.
No. We'll get to the good stuff, the happy stuff. Don't worry. But I mean, you've had a heavy duty. I mean, counselor, my goodness, the last few years for you, my goodness. I mean.
Yeah, no. So being the chair of public health has been. I've had a lot of different roles in my professional life. I've been a lawyer. I've been a labor negotiator. I've been a mediator, this was certainly the most challenging, but at the same time the most rewarding role that I've ever taken on. The way that the city services came together and supported public health, the way that community members supported their the most vulnerable in our community, whether it was getting groceries for people that couldn't get out, or just phoning and checking in on people, making sure they were safe and sound. Taking the precautions of wearing that mask and physically distancing and being, very aware that was so important to keeping the spread down. So exhausting, absolutely, challenging, but, we absolutely saw the best of Ottawa in the response, both from city staff, and from the people who live in Ottawa. Just amazing cooperation and collaboration to push this back in our community.
I think for public health, I mean, it's newfound respect, I think, from the people of Ottawa. I think upper levels of government too, Councillor Egli, from, well, yeah, we have a public health board and, it's in charge of things like food safety at restaurants and, promoting not smoking and stuff like this. But, now it's beyond that now. There's a whole new respect for it, I think, about its role in the city.
Yeah, the joke used to be at public health, if you don't hear from us, we're doing our job. Because that means that there weren't, food poisoning outbreaks in restaurants and that sort of thing. And but now, yes, you can't pick up a newspaper, listen to the radio, watch TV without having a story about public health. And I think the challenge for public health going forward, and I hope I get to start it a little bit before the end of this term, and whoever takes over will pick it up next term, is rebuilding public health capacity to provide the services that we normally would, and whether that's dental care for people who can't afford it, support for new moms and families, tackling the substance use issues in our city. Those are things we have to get back to. We have to get back to those in a significant and serious way, and not ignore the fact that COVID is here and probably will be here for the foreseeable future. But that will become, I think, and should become part of the slate of things that we respond to. But we need to get back to our basics and provide the services that we're supposed to.
So when you look around the ward, what are you most proud of? In the 12 years, when this was something I wanted to get done and I got it done. What is that thing?
Well, as I say, one of the things I'm proudest about is how the community did come together and respond to the tornado. I think that was absolutely phenomenal. There's no guidebook for a councillor. What do you do if you wake up and on that day there's a natural disaster? Like, how do you respond? So I'm very proud of my community in that regard. It's funny, I got an email yesterday after I made my announcement from a couple who said, every time we walk across the bridge, I got a little bridge installed across Nepean Creek. Every time we walk across that bridge, we think of you and the work that you did. So that means a lot to me. So for me, being a city councillor has been about dealing with the things that communities want. So we revitalized a lot of parks, put in new infrastructure, made them, more accessible. One of the ones we're doing this year, actually, we're doing a pilot with a new form of surfacing in the play area to make it more accessible for people with walkers and wheelchairs, so that everybody can use the park. So things like that resonate for me. That been able to make Ward 9 a better place to live for people and for families to grow up in.
Well, Councillor, thank you for your service to the city. I know you have a few months left yet, but thank you for your service. It's a long time to be a city councillor. A lot of hours involved, a lot of time away from your family, and I commend you for it, sir.
Well,
thank you
Robert.
again.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Yeah. Councillor Keith Egli. Be back after the news. So that's some municipal election news. We'll talk about the Ontario election after this on the City News.
News in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, April 21st. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 7 degrees. It's 8 in Smiths Falls. And here's what's making news this hour. Ukraine's deputy prime minister has given a number on the people inside a steel plant in Mariupol. He tells the messaging app Telegram about 1,000 civilians and 500 wounded soldiers are holed up in that plant, and they need to be pulled out today. Now, Russia's President Vladimir Putin says there is no need to try and overrun that plant because he has put up a barricade that, in Putin's words, even a fly couldn't get through. Now, Spain's prime minister and Denmark's have arrived in Kyiv to meet with the Ukrainian president about ways to help Ukraine fight this Russian invasion. New council coming in October. Several councillors are not running for a seat around City Hall in Ottawa. One of those not reoffering is Knoxdale Merivale's Keith Egli. He tells the Rob Snow Show a challenge for public health, for example, where he was chair, is rebuilding capacity to provide the services they normally would have, but took a back seat to the COVID pandemic. But he says they also can't ignore that virus either. The opposition NDP in Ontario says if elected as government in the June vote, prescription contraception will be covered. Leader Andrea Horvath says the rising cost of living is hurting people and families, and she says forcing them to pay about $30 a month for the pill, for in some cases years, will take away their free choice about reproductive health. City News Time, 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's time for Ontario Politics This Week. The weeks get more interesting as we welcome back Lindsay Maskell, Liberal strategist, former advisor to Premier McGuinty. Good morning, Lindsay Maskell.
Good morning, Rob.
Morning, Andrew Brander, Vice President, Crestview Strategy, former advisor to the Ford government. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning.
Polls. Lots of polling data. So let's go. I might just throw some questions out here about the polls. Let me run down the numbers here. Ipsos poll. Ipsos Public Affairs. Tightening race here. PC's down 3 to 35. Libs up by 4 points to 32. The NDP down 1 to 23. So PC's 35, Libs 32, NDP 23. In the 905, it's basically a tie. Wow. PC's 37, Libs 36, NDP 19. Toronto proper, which I'm guessing must mean 416 and not 905. It's the Libs opening up a lead. Liberals 38, PCs 31, NDP 21, but it's the PCs by a country mile here in Eastern Ontario. PCs 48, Liberals 29, NDP 17. Okay, so that would suggest a tightening race. What do you think is going on here, Andrew? The race seems to be tightening, according to that poll.
Yeah, I mean, well, if you look back over at least the last year, I would say from my observations, Doug Ford and the PCs have actually been pretty consistent in terms of their level of support. There's a range of 2 or 3 points for the PCs, but where I see the big swings happening more recently, and my big takeaway from this is that the Liberals are eating the NDP's lunch. And you've seen that recently in the way that Del Duca has been sort of approaching his announcements, and he and his team must see that that area as the area for growth. The PCs have done such a have put so much effort into ensuring that they occupy some of that more centrist part of the spectrum. That it's hard for the Liberals to find areas where they can sort of outflank them. I specifically point to obviously the working for workers stuff, reforms, and they really haven't left a lot of room for the Liberals. So the Liberals' only option is to move further left, which they seem to be reaping the benefits from, at least reflected in these polls.
Okay. What do you think, Lindsay?
Well, I will say, no matter what party is leading the polls, I would still always say they're just a great reflection.
Snapshot in time, snapshot in time. There's Lindsay's go-to line, snapshot in time. But Andrew's saying, your team is doing a good job making the case that if we're the agents for change. It's not Andrea Horwath.
I think the big takeaway is this. This is a two-way race.
Two-way race.
Between the Liberals and the Conservatives. The other thing is the NDP in 2018 didn't pick up one seat from a Conservative. They only picked up Liberal seats. They did not pick up one seat from a Conservative. In fact, I don't think they have since 1990. So they just aren't in play. The other important takeaway when you look at those numbers in the 905, those are Conservative seats. That is Durham region, that is Halton region, so Mississauga. Those are Liberal versus Conservative races, except for some areas in around Brampton where the NDP holds some seats there. Yeah. So that's a very interesting number to watch with the vote-rich 416 and 905. In 2018, yes, the Liberals absolutely bled votes to both the NDP and the Conservatives. But when you look at the past federal election, there are so many current sitting NDP MPPs who their party came in third. Just not, just a bit of a blip. So that I think Andrew and I mostly have a difference of opinion on the room in the centrist voting area. Particularly with the type of Liberal that Stephen Del Duca is and the things he's been out talking about. But I think the big thing to watch is some of those vote-rich areas, but also just, I think we're starting to see this collapse of the NDP. They had their best shot in 2018, and very few people would get a fourth kick at the can.
Yeah.
So it's and
yet here we are.
Been that effective.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's move on to this Abacus data poll, which puts the PCs up by 4. PCs 36, Liberals 32, NDP 9 points behind the Liberals in third place. Wow. 36, 32, 23. That's interesting. Similar to Ipsos, but. I want to get into some of the other questions that David Coletto asked at Abacus Data. Andrew, half of Ontarians, 49%, say they definitely want to see a change in government. What do you think of that as a change number, appetite for change? Half want change, half don't.
50-50. I mean, after 2 years of a pandemic, who doesn't feel like they want some form of change? Yeah. I just, you know what? I will say there does seem to be an interesting sort of disconnect between the appetite for change number and the rest of the poll, right? I mean, you look at who makes the best premier. Doug Ford by leaps and bounds. You look at preferred party. Again, the PCs are far ahead. So there seems to be a bit of a struggle to reconcile, about half. There are obviously people that want to see some change. That might be we want to see change, but we don't want to see change in government. So
sure, okay.
So
that's the next question. You know, best premier. Ford comes out best premier, 35. Horvath 17. Del Duca's like who's he? That's the big problem for Del Duca, it seems to me.
Totally,
Lindsay. I'm not surprised. I mean, it's kind of the O'Toole thing. If Mr. Trudeau if the news goes like this for 2 years, COVID, here's Mr. Trudeau at Rideau Cottage. COVID, right? That was the news for 2 years. And in Ontario, it was COVID. Here's Doug Ford. COVID. Here's Doug Ford. I mean, if you're Stephen Del Duca, how do you break through that? I'm not surprised to see a number like that.
Well, the good thing is, and I mean, I did see this happen with O'Toole, which was that when it became a tight race between the two of them, the media particularly took a good kick at the tires, as they say, about Aaron O'Toole, and did help do and play that important role with people about doing some of that work of what would they be like as a leader? What do you need to know about this person? So the nice thing is the writ hasn't actually started yet. We're still about 2 weeks away, and there is, people. The interesting thing about the vote possibility of this is the amount of people that would be willing to change their vote, right? If 50% of people are open to the idea of change, it means you have to present a plan, a leader, and a team to see if you can actually get them to change their vote. So there's still a lot of runway to work with, but it does mean there's a pathway there to work with. But I do think that it's going to make a big difference once the writ drops and people do have to really make a decision, right? The lease is up. Are you going to renew or are you not going to renew? And what are your options? So there will be some light in that for Stephen Del Duca, but I do think that now that polls are really showing this as a two-way race, that I think the media will do a little bit more of a poke at Stephen and help.
Oh, well, I'll be poking at him. Don't you worry. Okay. Top issues. This was interesting in the Abacus polling. Top issues: the cost of living, housing affordability, which is another cost of living thing, healthcare, tax relief, which is a cost of living thing. They don't want higher taxes. Okay, they're like, no, I want tax relief, and jobs. Which is interesting because unemployment is at a historic low right now. I wonder what they mean when they talk about jobs. But the cost of living, housing affordability, those are the two big issues right now. It's not COVID. Healthcare is number 3, but it's, I'm not sure if healthcare is always a top issue in a provincial election. This could be a cost of living and a housing election. What do you think, Andrew, about these issues that people are identifying?
I think that's exactly right, and I think that's exactly what it is. It's economy, it's pocketbook issues. As you said, 4 of the 5 top issues, economic in nature, jobs, affordability, taxes, and topping the list, cost of living, 16% higher than any other issue. Yesterday, we saw numbers, highest inflation in 31 years. People are feeling the pinch. They're looking for relief. They're going to be looking for who is promising them more money in their pockets at the end of the day. And if that's the ballot box question on election day, well, we can look at what Stephen Del Duca has been talking about for the past week. Not an economic announcement at all. A number of announcements, all of them to do with things that are not speaking to any of those top issues. And so I think at the end of the day, voters are going to be looking for those announcements that are going to leave them better off at the end of the day.
Okay. On that, combating racism, of course, that's a noble goal. Banning handguns, I don't know, it's kind of weak if you ask me as a policy, but where are the Liberals on these pocketbook issues? The poll would scream at you, I can't afford to live in Ontario anymore. So where are the Liberals on this? They don't seem to be talking about it very much. What's going on here, Lindsay? Come on.
Well, the event where Andrew and I met was actually a speech on economic dignity and economic options for Ontarians, but it was just a small part of what will be a larger plan. In the flow and cadence of an election, remember, next Thursday we have the provincial budget, which essentially will serve as the Conservatives' platform. The Liberals need to, and the NDP need to come out after that with their plan for a plan to have any air. People need to start to be thinking about an election, and you think about the best window or timing for the announcements that are going to be most important to voters is the closer to when they're making their decision and starting to think about their voting options. So there have been small planks and ideas released to start to build a contrast, but we're not into the campaign yet. So we haven't seen anybody.
Stay tuned. You're saying stay tuned. Is that what you're saying? Stay tuned. Okay.
But I will say, if you think about the federal turning point in the election, it was actually around handguns, particularly in the 416 and 905. So it does have a very big, a far more GTA 905 regional effect. So it's actually a pretty important issue in Toronto, particularly when we just had a big shooting at a subway recently. These are shocking things living in Toronto.
Okay, we'll be right back. This is the Rob Snow Show to talk a little bit more about these polls and some of the other big issues ahead of the election call in just a few weeks. This is City News.
At about 2017, I invited 9 other artists who I've been watching here in Almonte and area, who I really respect, and asked if they'd like to put a show on with me. And 2018 was our first show. It was absolutely wonderful. We did it again in 2019. And as you just mentioned, 2020, we had to cancel because of the pandemic. It was so successful. We weren't even sure initially if this was going to work, but we had 1,600 people show up in 2019 over 2 days. So I think there might be more this time around, which will be awesome. We'll all be wearing masks. Okay. But yeah, we're very much looking forward to it.
I mentioned to you off camera that Almonte really is one of my favorite towns to do a day trip. It's a wonderful way to just get out of the city. But there's something special about Almonte when it comes to the arts. It seems to be just a vibrant artistic community. Let's talk a little bit about that. What do you think makes Almonte so attractive to artists?
We don't know. Everybody who's here who is an artist, and there's a lot of us, we know that Almonte is all about the arts, all about culture. We have a newspaper called The Hum. It's all about entertainment and anything to do with arts and culture. We have Puppets Up coming up. We have so many festivals and theater plays. The Textile Museum, where we're going to be having our show, has different exhibits throughout the year, and it's all got to do with creativity. It's just a mecca for anything to do with the arts. It's a wonderful, wonderful place to live.
We're seeing, of course, some of the pieces, some of the art, the styles that we're going to see at this year's 10 Collective show. Tell me a little bit more about what people can expect. What sort of mediums will we see?
A wide range, and it's definitely the cliche saying, something for everybody. Multimedia, there's abstract, there's expressionism, representational art, high realism. If you looked at the names, people will see the names of the artists, some of them are very recognizable, and when you go to the website, you'd see for yourself as well. Very diverse styles, very different mediums. Yes. Definitely something for everybody to just come in and enjoy, and there will be paintings that are available for sale, but you don't have to come and feel you have to buy.
Right.
It is definitely to show our work.
Eileen, how important are shows like this to artists like yourself and the other 9 artists that are participating?
It's quite important to get out. Regardless of the pandemic, we are a very solitary group of people. And our art is always created in our studio with the lights over here, and nobody comes in, and we're very solitary.
The world world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Yep, returns with Lindsay Maskell, Andrew Brander. It's Ontario Politics this week. One more poll because polls are so much fun. Main Street is doing polling for iPolitics, updated daily. Keto Maggie's firm. And this is kind of the outlier. If the other polls show a tightening race, this shows, a massive landslide for the Ford PCs right now. PC's 39, and then a close battle for second place, and they're both way behind. Libs 25, NDP 21. And then projected seat count, 83 for the Progressive Conservatives. 83. I think they have 67 now. NDP 21, and the Liberals would have 13. 6 are considered toss-up, and Mike Schreiner would be elected as a Green MPP from Guelph, I guess. But I don't know. Do you think that's an outlier? Is that the outlier poll? Anyone?
I would just say, as Lindsay likes to say, snapshot in time. One thing I do like about Main Street's methodology, and not just because it's showing a more favorable result for the Tories, is that it is a rolling poll. So the other ones do truly, as Lindsay's saying, represent a very short moment in time. These are sort of Main Street's methodology sort of prorates that over a rolling period. And that's why their accuracy, especially when it came to the federal election, was I think one of the more representative of where things actually ended up on election day. And you'll have to remember that throughout, although the polls and sentiment may change, people are casting votes at very different times during the election, right? So there's a lot of people who will get out during advanced polls this time in Ontario. That's going to be 10 days worth of advanced polls. So where public sentiment might be on June 2nd may be very different than when someone's casting their vote on May 21st.
Yeah, and I just think with rolling polls, you don't always catch the change in sentiment, right, and how quickly things can change.
Okay.
So that is the one risk to those, but it also does seem not only an outlier but off because they were usually they are very close to where Abacus and Ipsos are. So it is also just a little bit strange to see them so far away in numbers from their counterparts. They're usually all within the same zone of each other. It's usually just Forum that's off on their own.
I will agree with you there. Warren Kinsella writes in today's Sun papers. Kinsella ran, it says, Dalton McGuinty's 3 war rooms. And a big Chrétien liberal. Not a big fan of the Trudeau Liberals, big Chrétien liberal. He has compared Doug Ford to Jean Chrétien in some ways. People never really gave Jean Chrétien much credit either, thought he was dumb, didn't think much of a speech from Jean Chrétien, but the political success speaks for itself. But Warren Kinsella writes today, I'd wager that Ford's base, he's talking about Ford Nation, this idea of Ford Nation. Ford's base is more racially diverse than that of any other conservative politician in North America. I first saw it almost a decade ago during a Toronto mayoral race. Downtown progressives sneered that he was a racist, but Ford had the support of 70% of people of color. Ford Nation is like the United Nations. Everyone is represented there. Warren Kinsella in the Sun papers today. Who is a citizen of Ford Nation in your experience, Andrew?
I think Warren actually has a deeper understanding than even I do. To be candid, I'm still not quite sure I understand the composure of Ford Nation, but I have seen it many times at what used to be Ford Fest, the the annual gathering that they used to host pre-pandemic, of course. But I think we'll have a much greater understanding and a better idea of what Ford Nation is and what it looks like once this campaign's over. Let's remember the last election really wasn't won by Ford. He was made leader 2 months before a campaign, rarely made available during the campaign. It was about time for change and getting Kathleen Wynne out. This time around, the results will be Ford's to own. So to understand who Ford Nation is, what I am actually really looking at here is one riding in particular, York South-Weston. In 3 of the last 4 elections, the Tories did not even crack 4,000 votes in this riding, 11% of the vote. Last election, under Ford, they came exceptionally close. This time around, they have just nominated Michael Ford as the candidate in York South-Weston. And so this is significant because we know how much Doug cares about his family and their reputation. There's zero chance he would have approved this nomination if there was any chance that the Tories don't win this riding, or at least show exceptionally well. A quick look at the demographics there: 50% visible minority, apartments and semi-detached homes, high school educated. These are people who work very hard and are struggling to get ahead. So I think those are the people who Premier Ford resonates with.
Okay. What do you think, Lindsay? What do you think?
Well, first of all, I think Warren is, paid to write what the Conservatives would like to have be a narrative.
Oh, yeah?
So it is not, I agree with Andrew. I don't think people had a strong opinion on Ford one way or the other. There's also always a mistake about making it just about the leader. That's not the way Ontarians vote, right? They vote for their local member.
Wow.
So it is always a mistake to make it just about you and the ego of the term Ford Nation. I will say Michael Ford is a councillor in Etobicoke. I don't think this will go over as well as people will expect of the family politics being brought into an area that has been one of the most highly impacted communities by COVID with a high unemployment rate. So these are, I don't have the same opinion on that particular riding that Andrew has.
Right.
But I do think that there is. Doug Ford is a populist. He is not a traditional conservative, and so he is going to attract some different people. But it will, I don't know that means that it's about a collective United Nations of the wonderful fabric that is Ontario. I think there was an interesting moment in time, but it was about a change election about anybody but in 2018, and I don't think we're going to have that same feel in this election. And so Doug will actually have to run on his record, run on why he thinks under this brand he's the best person to hold the job again. And I think that we have voters that have been through a rough 2 years of this pandemic and have seen the rich get richer and driving a big concern about our economy. And I think it's going to shape up to be a very different election that Ford should be thinking about, more talking about a team than just an individual.
Okay. Great discussion this week. I enjoyed it very much. We'll speak next week. All the best.
Thanks, Rob.
Yep. Bye-bye. Yep. Lindsay Maskell used to work for Dalton McGuinty, Liberal strategist. Andrew Brander, Conservative strategist with Crestview Strategies. I'm Rob Snow. Talkback Hour, 750-1310. We're going to talk about freedom and Poilievre's pitch for freedom at 750-1310. This is City News.
Being a crossing guard works great as part of my schedule as a high school student because I still have time to do my tests and assignments while earning a little bit of cash on the side.
Working as a crossing guard fits into my current lifestyle because it gives me a lot of time during the day to pursue hobbies that I'm very interested in.
A friend of mine introduced me to this job. I didn't know it was actually a paid job.
I always start my day. It's a very little, I guess, few months baby, and she always comes with her dad on a pram, and the smile she has, like, oh my God.
Well, I think the OSC is a very good employer. They show quite clearly that they care about you. They're very polite.
They really make you feel like you're part of a family.
It's fun. I really enjoy it.
Gets us out of the house, too.
Yeah.
WW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, April 21st. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 7 degrees. It's 8 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. A personal support worker is facing charges after an 87-year-old woman was assaulted at a long-term care home. Ottawa Police Elder Abuse Section investigated a case reported by the woman's family. They had placed a camera in the 87-year-old's room after they saw unexplained bruising. After seeing the tape, they contacted police. They opened an investigation back on March 28th. 25-year-old Natalie Mooney of Ottawa is facing 1 count of assault. City News Time 10:02. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Rain on the way for most areas and will continue until about 8 o'clock tonight. The high today near 11 degrees and 4 for the low. Tomorrow we'll have varying amounts of sun and cloud, favoring the cloud at times. High near 12. For today, the high 11.
And right now in Ottawa, 7 degrees. It's 8 degrees in Smiths Falls. The Ontario NDP is promising the province would fully cover prescription contraception if they win the June 2nd election. Leader Andrea Horvath says people are struggling with the high cost of living and should not have to shell out $30 a month for birth control. Horvath says her plan would cover all prescription contraception, including emergency birth control such as Plan B, the pill, IUDs, implants, shots, patches, and rings. OHIP already covers vasectomies and tubal ligations. While that cost has not been released, Horvath says they will have a fully costed platform. Horvath says she will have more announcements to make about pharmacare during the provincial election campaign. City News Time 10:03. Russia has ordered its troop not to storm a steel plant that is considered the last remaining Ukrainian stronghold in the besieged city of Mariupol.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has instead ordered Russian military forces in the port city to block it so that not even a fly comes through. The only remaining Ukrainian forces are holed up in the sprawling Azovstal steel plant. Leaving the plant in Ukrainian hands blocks the Russians of declaring victory in Mariupol, which is of strategic importance in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk demanded that a humanitarian corridor is created from the steel plant to release about 1,000 civilians and 500 wounded soldiers. I'm Karen Chamas.
City News Time 10:04. Today is the Queen's 96th birthday. As she celebrates today quietly, a new poll finds a growing number of Canadians are done with having the royal family as our head of state.
It's not exactly a nice birthday present, but the new survey from the Angus Reid Institute finds 51% of Canadians want the constitutional monarchy to end in Canada. That's up from 38% back in 2016. However, most Canadians still love Lizzie. Around two-thirds say they still have a favorable view of Queen Elizabeth II and will be affected when she's no longer with us. The same can't be said for her son. In fact, Canadians are quite cold on the idea of Prince Charles taking the throne, with only 29% of people liking the fact that he would become king. Charles and Camilla are visiting Canada next month. While Canadians want to do away with the royals, removing the monarchy is not a simple task and would cost taxpayers a lot of money to remove them from our system of government. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
And you only have until midnight tomorrow to pick up your CHEO 50/50 tickets, half the pot, and a new Ford F-150, the grand prize. You have until midnight tomorrow night to get your tickets. So far, the winner's cash take is over $900,000. You can order your tickets at cheo5050.ca. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
How could Canada be more free? How could you be more free? Or is it freer? Whatever it is, Pierre Poilievre says he wants to make Canada the freest country in the world, and he wants to make Canadians the freest people in the world. How could Canada be freer than it is now? How could you be freer than you are right now? That's what I would like to know this morning. Let's talk about freedom in the Poilievre sense of the word at 750-1310. 750-1310. 613-750-1310. I mean, freedom. Who doesn't want to be free? But what do you think when Pierre Poilievre says he wants to make Canada the freest country in the world? You hear that? What do you think? What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Okay. What does that mean to you when he says that, when you hear him say that? I'm curious what you think when you hear that call to action. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Making Canada more free, making Canadians more free. What does that mean to you? What does that mean to you? Because I'm as interested as anybody else. I'm not, endorsing anyone. I'm not a member of the party or anything like that. But obviously, Pierre Poilievre has tapped into something. It's an anxiety. It's a sentiment. It's a frustration. It's an anger. I don't know if I would quite go so far as to call it a rage, but I mean he's put his finger on something here. And I look at the crowds that he's getting, and I look at the media coverage that he's getting. Look at all the news stories and the columns in the newspapers and all the talking heads on TV and the political media. And hey, I'm guilty of it too. All of us, I think, have an obsession with covering Pierre Poilievre right now. And his message is freedom. He is pitching freedom. That is the core of his message, that you are not as free as you should be or could be. What does that mean to you? And Canada is not as free as it should be or could be. So how could you be freer? More free? Give that some thought and give me a call at 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Dan is in the Byward Market. You're on City News. Good morning, Dan.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Dan. Nice to hear from you. Pierre Poilievre says he wants to make Canada more free, and he wants to make you, Dan, more free than you are right now. How could that happen? What would that look like?
We need to remove the central bank.
Remove the central bank. Okay.
Reserve lending. I ask you, who owns the central bank, Rob?
Who owns the central bank?
Who owns the Bank of Canada?
Don't know. Who owns it?
Who owns the Federal Reserve in the U.S.?
Well, I know the big investment banks, I believe, in the United States own the Federal Reserve.
Same group of people own our central bank.
Okay.
And are they elected? Was Tiff Macklin elected by the people?
No, he was appointed, right? He's appointed by the government, right? Yeah.
Correct. I see that the inflation nonsense we're going through is a symptom of the problem, which is the central banking system around the world.
Okay.
That's how we get more free. It's not a Poilievre or Trudeau thing. It's not a Jagmeet Singh thing. It's not a Stephen Harper thing. It's a central banking thing.
Okay, then who would be in charge of the money supply? Who would be in charge of the monetary policy of the country? Who would be in charge of ensuring price stability in the country?
Right. This is
the politicians. The politicians.
There was John Maynard Keynes, the Keynesian theory of economics, which we're sort of in his plan now. He had a plan of, I believe it was called a banker coin. Don't think of a coin like a Bitcoin or anything. It was a banker coin, and a way you base for the IMF and the Bank of International Settlements to compare sort of currencies globally based on this banker coin theory. I am not an economist or
right. Okay.
super knowledgeable in it, but its theory seems. Like
but you think if we rid ourselves of the Bank of Canada and central banking, Canada would be a freer country?
I think it would have
Canadians would be a freer people.
I think if we did it independently ourselves, it would cause issues in the short term. I think it's more of a global thing that all the countries have to figure out a different system.
All right, Dan. Okay, something to think about. Okay, 750-1310, 750-1310. Pierre Poilievre says he wants to make Canada the freest country. This is what he is pitching. You should be living in the freest country in the world. What does that mean? How could Canada be more free than it is today? How could you be more free or freer than you are today? Mark, Ottawa South, you're on City News. Mark.
Thank you, Rob.
Hi.
The most important thing to do is to pin down Pierre Poilievre on exactly what does he mean when he says he's going to make you more free. What exactly legislative measures? And a specific task, because he's the one would become prime minister and actually deliver this freedom. What specifically is it? And it reminds me of Jimmy Carter back in 1976 when he's running for president. He's going to deliver a government as good as the people. Well, what exactly is that?
Okay.
So again, it's more than actually what I think would make us more free. What is specifically is Pierre Poilievre proposing? Because that's what you're going to get if he becomes prime minister.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. A question better put to. Well, I'm putting it to the callers today, Mark. I thank you for calling. Downtown, Cameron.
Hey, Rob. How's it going?
It goes, sir. Thank you.
It goes.
The country should be the freest country on earth, according to Pierre Poilievre, and you, as a citizen of the country, one of the freest people on earth, Cameron. What does that mean to you? How could you be more free than you are today?
Well, I'm sure what I'm going to say is going to resonate with probably everybody, and it doesn't matter if you're conservative or liberal or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Reform the CRA, top to bottom. Like, enough with the taxes. It is too much. Was there not a study done 2-3 years ago or something that we're taxed at least 46% of all our income is gone to taxes throughout several levels of government? I mean, is there not, I used to work for the CRA, close to the minister's office. I know what goes on in there and how they treat the taxpayers, how they speak of the taxpayers. I was in disbelief that agency hates us so much. I even caught an auditor lying on an audit. It cost that taxpayer everything.
Yeah.
I'm telling you,
Okay.
it's such a vile department.
Okay, whatever. I don't know. But you we pay too much tax. Some tax relief.
We do.
Tax relief, and you would be more free. You would be more free because you would be able to spend more of your own money, which is fair enough. Okay, that's fair enough.
We need to stop with the phony tax programs and the little $60 GST refunds and all this stuff. Just let people keep their money. But the problem is, it's like the government does not trust that Canadians will spend the money back in the economy. So they'd rather tax you right away to make sure they get it all.
Okay.
It needs to end.
All right, tax relief. Cameron says I would be more free if I had some tax relief. Fair enough. 10:15, Rob Snow Show, City News.
Big crowd here tonight at the Ottawa Civic Centre, the OHL Championship Game 6. Two of the best face-off men in the OHL meeting right here at the Civic Centre. Zenon Konopka against Stephen Weiss. And we're underway as John Zion grabs it, gets across the blue line. Quick shot right on. Zep, no problem. High off the glass, back to center for Ottawa. Sellers, pass up to Bauman. Gets bumped off the puck by Wisniewski. Puck up!
Talking earlier today that sometimes in big games it's a lucky bounce that can decide things. Was he ever right on this play so far? Watch Sozanov going the opposite way. Just take a whack at it. Look at Talbot strip the puck from Oosternaal. There it is in front of the net, and Sozanov gets a piece of it, and it goes in behind Rob Zepp. Bowman carries the puck up the ice, then Talbot strips him, and there's Sozanov, who outwins the assignment with the back-checking Damien Surma, and Ottawa's got the lead.
John Zion for Ottawa. Up to Sozanov. His pass to Talbot. One man to beat. Talbot scores! Far side, low on Rob Zepp. Power play goal for the Ottawa 67s.
He is on fire tonight for the 67s. Look at the jump in his legs. Right here, he explodes with the puck. Head up, shot, a goal scorer's goal from the captain, Mighty Joe. And the 67s now have a stranglehold on the Plymouth Whalers. 2-0. Nothing Zepp could do on that play. He just placed it perfectly.
It had nowhere else to go.
Just a beautiful goal scorer's goal from the captain.
Tied up by two Whalers. Savage came in there, and here comes Plymouth. 3-on-2. Bernarski with Jarrett and Stewart. Centered in front. Scores! Preston Mitzi left alone in front. And Plymouth climbs to within one. Picked off by Jarrett, centered in front. Ottawa can't get a rope. Bounce off the leg. Whalers. Third zone. The Ottawa 67s win the 2001 OHL Championship.
There's Brian Kilray, Zenon Konopka handing him the cup.
Talk back.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Freedom. The key word of the hour, Rob Snow Show Talkback Hour, freedom. Pierre Poilievre says he wants to make Canada the freest country in the world. Wouldn't you love to live in the freest country in the world? He wants to make Canadians the freest people in the world. What does that mean to you when he says that? What does that mean to you when he says that? How could that be achieved? How could Canada be the freest country in the world? How could you be a citizen in the freest country in the world? Freedom, freedom, freedom. It must be registering. I mean, I'm looking at the media coverage. Look at the crowds. He's saying something that is connecting with people. and his message is freedom. In Ottawa East, Kevin, you're on City News. Kevin.
Good morning, Rob.
Hi, Kevin.
You know what would make me feel free?
Free.
Is if the government stopped sticking its hand in my pocket.
Okay.
I mean, every time you turn around, if you want to build a house, you got to do this assessment, that assessment, that assessment, that assessment.
Yeah, okay.
And we have so many levels of government in Ottawa, it's crazy.
Well,
I mean, they're busting.
We do love to be governed in this city, that's for sure. We have a lot of bureaucracy in Ottawa, that's for sure.
And now, years ago, NCC, federal authority, busted a couple of kids for selling lemonade.
That's right.
I mean,
that's right. Yeah, it is right. Yeah.
So where does it end?
Where does it end?
And the thing is you're not saying what freedom is. And I mean, I'm going to vote.
Well, I'm not running for prime minister, right, or a conservative leader. So I'm wondering what Pierre Poilievre. I mean, it's registering with people. He is suggesting that people aren't as free as they should or could be.
But he doesn't say what that means.
Right.
And I mean, I'm going to vote for him anyways.
Okay.
But I'd like a clearer definition.
You would like a clearer definition. Okay. Do you have this feeling that you could be freer than you are, Kevin?
Well, I feel a little freer if I didn't have to pay so much
tax. Yeah, so much tax. This is interesting because tax relief hasn't registered. Thank you, Kevin, for your call. As a big issue in a long time, but it's registering again in the public opinion research in the polls. Again, it's emerging that we're paying too much tax. Steve in Westboro.
Good day. How are you?
Hi, Steve. How are you?
Not bad.
Good. Could you be more free today, though, Steve? Could you be more free?
Too many members of Parliament.
Too many members.
They're costing us a fortune.
Okay.
Too much red tape involved with members of Parliament and the senators.
Okay.
They're costing taxpayers millions and billions of dollars to have these people screw up our government. Do all kinds of red tape crap, right?
Right.
We need to be free of a lot of this garbage of members of Parliament that are taking taxpayers for a ride. 31%, I heard, of the Liberal Party are landlords or have investments in properties, right?
That's right. There's a report on that this morning about the number of Canadian politicians.
They should have a law in Canada to be free, right? Of members of Parliament that are landlords and are involved in real estate.
You don't think if you're an MP, you shouldn't be allowed to own a rental property?
That's exactly it, yes, because
you don't think
you are the ones that are making the money.
You think it's a conflict of interest? You think it's a conflict of interest?
Definitely. Definitely.
Okay, but what if you declare your conflict of interest?
You can't be a member of Parliament because you're involved with real estate, and look what's happening in Canada. I want to be free of the landlords getting richer and richer in Ontario.
Well, what do you think about the idea of Pierre Poilievre owns a rental property in Calgary?
He won't be able to run.
Well, he's running right now, sir. He's campaigning right now. He just issued a news release about how he wants to fix the housing market, like literally minutes ago.
And they're the ones that are making the money. 31% of the Liberal Party.
It's in the news today. Co-owns a Calgary area rental property through a real estate venture called Liberty West Properties, and his wife owns a condo that she rents out, and the condo's in Orleans.
And how much are they charging for their condos?
It doesn't say here.
Probably a lot of money, right?
Well, you want to rent a condo in Orleans, it's probably going to cost you a lot of money. Right?
So what I'm saying is, if you want to be a member of Parliament, you have no interest in, because you are the ones that are voting too, right?
Okay, but how would that make you, if the question is freedom, how would that make you more free than you are today?
Because then I know that the members of Parliament are corrupt, are involved with rentals and all that other stuff, the red tape. So you know what? It's like if you want to be a police officer, you can't have a criminal record, correct?
I I would assume so. I don't know for
My
sure.
brother is a police officer.
Well, then you would know better than me, sir. You would.
Yeah,
know better
you can't have a record. So the way it should work now, because of our economy being and so many people suffering, and the landlord is doing whatever they wish to do in Canada, right?
Okay.
I would say, if you are running for a party and you are a property owner and you own and involved in tons of money like condos and you're charging outrageous prices, you should not be able to run.
All right, Steve. Okay, I don't agree with that, but it is interesting to see that news story this morning. Global News has the story this morning. Pierre Poilievre owns a rental property, a condo in Calgary. His wife owns a condo in Orleans. Headline, Pierre Poilievre among the dozens of MPs with rental property amid housing crunch. It's a fair article. It's an interesting read. It's all the more interesting, though, because it centers on Poilievre. Like, it's Poilievre that's in the headline. Someone who may or may not win the Conservative leadership race, someone who may or may not become prime minister someday, but, he may become prime minister someday, but not any day soon. He's not in the cabinet. He's not running a government department. He's not responsible for billions in spending. He's not really responsible for government policy, but he's the one in the headline, right? Isn't that cool? Isn't that something? Quote, the 42-year-old Conservative politician who has drawn a six-figure public salary since he was 25 years old co-owns a Calgary area rental property through a real estate venture called Liberty West. Liberty West. Of course it's called Liberty West. He owns a condo. His wife owns a condo in Orleans that is rented to a tenant that has no relationship with the Poilievres. There is nothing against the rules about Poilievre owning an investment property. As Global News has reported, at least 65 other federal members of parliament also own investments in rental real estate, including a third of the Liberal cabinet. But their names are not in the headline. Poilievre's name is, though. Joan in Ottawa. Good morning, Joan.
Good morning, Rob. I'll be very brief.
Yes.
All more power to Pierre Poilievre if he owns a property, a rental property. Okay, fine. Getting to your question about freedom.
Freedom, yeah.
Yeah, I have a feeling, I just turned into your program, I have a feeling Canadians could be more free if we weren't having our monies contributed to some other European country's current war machine.
Okay.
That's all I've got to say, Rob.
All right, Joan. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Rob, Ottawa South. Morning, Rob.
Yes. Good morning.
So, Rob, Pierre Poilievre says he wants to make Canada the freest country in the world and Canadians the freest people on earth. How could he do that?
Well, that sounds like a lot like the Americans in the early 1900s. And the key to that is mass immigration, the land of the free and the American dream. And the biggest thing that we have in Canada that we're lacking is labor and people. And, we have so much to offer and give, housing, land, trees, water, development. And, if we tripled our population, our taxes would go down dramatically.
Okay.
And it would bring taxes down. We could develop.
Well, the immigration number is pretty high right now. I mean, it's record levels right now, 400,000 a year right now, Rob.
Yeah, well, in 1959 or 1960, the goal was to have Canada at 100 million by 2032, I believe.
Okay.
We are far behind that. It would solve so many problems fiscally for our country, including the health care, including, that 2% military that we're supposed to provide NATO.
Okay.
And so on and so on and so on. Infrastructure. I think that is the greatest detriment to us is our low population, and that's why we're higher taxed.
Thank you, Rob. Ottawa South, halftime. Rob Snow Show, Talkback Hour. Freedom. We're talking about freedom. Pierre Poilievre's pitch to you, your call to action. A country that is more free than it is today. What does that mean? What does that mean? This is City News.
I'm Danielle Allard, and I am a proud Ottawa born and raised singer-songwriter, and I'm part of Encore Ottawa 3.
Days I'm on fire, I don't even stop, I don't even drop, I don't even...
I think that this is the first time that I have unveiled a set of music that's all new music. I'm usually pulling from some of my older projects like Chameleon and Passing Notes and trying to feature songs from both of those, but the set you're about to hear has been all written within the last year. So I'm really excited to share that with Ottawa and share that with the world.
Sometimes it feels like we're falling when things are falling into...
What does it mean? Well, firstly, I'm seeing friends that I haven't seen in 2 years, so that is kind of stabbing me in the heart a little bit, but I'm also just so happy to be able to make art with all of these friends again. And what it means being in a venue like this for a local artist. I mean, Centrepoint Theatre is premier. I've been treated like an absolute rock star from the moment I just kind of knocked on the door and said, hey, can I unload my gear? Everybody's so helpful, and you're just used to kind of dragging all your stuff around, and it's such a hard business to be in, and this is a dream come true for any local artist who gets to participate in a series like this, and to also have access to an incredible film and audio crew. It's the dream.
I'm too small to house it, and it's not just me.
I really hope you like the music and just come and see all of the talent that Ottawa has to offer.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, April 21st. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 10 degrees. It's 11 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news this hour. A surprisingly high number of COVID cases across Ontario today. Over 4 times more cases reported, the number over 5,000 today compared to over 1,000 yesterday. The hospital rate and the number of people in ICUs remains about the same. Again, the case count has gone way up. Another 17 deaths are blamed on COVID across Ontario. A personal support worker facing charges after an 87-year-old woman was assaulted in a long-term care home. Ottawa Police Elder Abuse Section investigated the case, first reported by the woman's family back in March. 25-year-old Natalie Mooney of Ottawa is now charged with 1 count of assault. On the Queen's 96th birthday, a new poll out shows 51% of Canadians would like to drop the monarchy as head of state. That has risen dramatically. About 2/3 of Canadians still like the Queen, but that approval rating drops to 29% for Prince Charles. The OLG says an Ottawa man won an instant $1 million jackpot. Details on that and how you could become a millionaire, or at least very close to it, coming up at 11 o'clock. City News Time, 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Freedom. Conservative leadership contender and frontrunner Pierre Poilievre is pitching freedom. Right? He's pitching freedom. He says he wants to make Canada the freest country in the world, which sounds like a great goal. But I want to know, what does that mean to you? I want to know, how could the country be freer than it is today? How could you as a Canadian be freer than you are right now? I'll give you an example. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. I mean, this is what I'm thinking on this topic of freedom and Poilievre as the freedom warrior. One of the things that Poilievre is going to have to explain is where he stands on Bill 21 in Quebec, the Quebec secularism bill. What I have called I call it state-sponsored racism. I would go even so far as to call it religious persecution. Freedom of religion is a fundamental charter right. Section 2A of the charter, right? Everyone has the following fundamental rights: freedom of conscience, religion. I mean, it doesn't get any more basic than that. If you're going to do the freedom test, it doesn't get more fundamental than that. And the government of Quebec knows that. It knows that its Bill 21 violates a fundamental freedom. That's why it invoked the notwithstanding clause. Well, notwithstanding that it's a fundamental right, if you want to wear a religious garb, you can't work in the public sector in Quebec. End of story. Notwithstanding what it says in the charter. And we've seen how here, just in our region, how this can impact people's ability to earn a living and fully participate in society in a very real way, with the story of the popular teacher in Chelsea. So here we have a politician, okay? We have a politician attracting huge crowds, the buzz of politics right now, saying he wants to make this country the freest country on earth, Canadians the freest people on earth. Well, great. Great. Then what's your policy on Bill 21? Is it just the same old that we've heard from too many leaders over too many years in Ottawa that, well, you know, it's a Quebec thing and it's up to Quebecers. Quebecers are Canadian. Isn't that something that just cries out for leadership? Leadership that's been lacking here in Ottawa? And if Poilievre means what he says, isn't he going to have a better answer than, well, it's a Quebec thing? Quebec is still part of Canada, the last time I checked. Quebecers are Canadian. They carry Canadian passports. The last time I checked, and across the country and tell Canadians, I want to make you the freest people in the world. Well, shouldn't you have the courage to go in? You should have the courage to go into the deepest Francophone communities of the Quebecois and say, Bill 21 is wrong. It's anti-freedom, and I'm going to fight against it if I'm Prime Minister. Other than that, to me, it's just a bunch of bluster. Russ in Kemptville. Russ, good morning. You're on City News.
Good morning, Rob. How are you today?
I'm good, Russ. Thank you.
Good.
So, you're not as free, Russ, as you could be.
Well, no. I've called into you more than once, and I've said this exact same point more than once.
Okay.
Our aggregated tax rate in Canada, so all your taxes on everything, works out to 57%.
57, eh? Wow.
57% is what comes off of not only your paycheck, but out of your take-home pay by the time you're done for paying for taxes on your home heating, food, everything that you purchase.
All the taxes, all the total tax burden. Wow.
So how are we not tax slaves when 60% of what we make goes to the government? And everybody always debates social programs.
Yep.
If everybody had more in their pocket and we did a complete tax reform to move to, I don't have a solution, but a flat tax. First of all, the extremely wealthy people can't escape a flat tax because it's on the stuff that they like to buy, their high-end cars, their high-end homes, all of that.
Okay.
And then people can afford to, live a life. And that's what people are frustrated about. That's what Pierre Poilievre has gotten into. There used to be
tax relief, right?
Tax relief.
Yeah. It's coming back as an issue. It's coming back as an issue. It's in the latest Abacus poll. It's one of the top 5 issues in the country right now. It's tax relief.
Absolutely.
Haven't seen that in a while.
It's good. I love to see people are waking up to the fact that the government's telling you how to spend your money is essentially what's going on. And do you agree with everything that the government spends your money on, such as the Canada Pension Plan, making contributions to the World Economic Forum, right? You had a gentleman call in to talk about central banking. If you guys look into how central banking actually works and how money is actually created in the global economy.
And I put people to sleep and nobody would listen. So
well, people should take a breath and listen and learn so that they can see what's going on.
See what's going on. All right.
Yeah.
And you've got it all figured out, do you? Russ?
Definitely not, but I can see some problems.
Well, I mean, is the fact that there's inflation right now, should that come as a surprise?
Not at all. When you print billions of dollars in money and devalue currency because every dollar is worth less, what's going to happen? Inflation goes up. We've seen this story over and over and over again, Rob. Okay. You look at any economy that has rapid inflation, they're printing money like it's going out of style.
Okay. All right, Russ, thank you. Tax relief. I'd be more free if the government would let me keep more of my own money. That has been a popular opinion this morning. 750-1310, 750-1310. Freedom on the run. Thomas, Lanark, Frontenac. Thomas, good morning.
Good morning.
How could you be more free?
If my doctor was free, I think I'd be free.
Okay.
My problem is that medical professionals have not been free under the COVID restrictions to actually give me appropriate medical advice.
Oh.
I have a medical condition that's immune suppressing. I have to be on immune suppressing medication because I have an autoimmune problem. And so my doctor told me I must get the vaccine. But his decision to do so was biased because there's no medical evidence to support it for my condition, and if he had said anything otherwise, he would have lost his license. So we have a government that have restricted the freedoms of doctors that then have repercussions in our society.
You're less free because your doctor can't give you an honest medical assessment, is your
What kind of society do we live in when scientists and doctors cannot speak of medically proven truths because they contradict other people's opinions on it? Like, that's not freedom.
Okay. All right, Thomas, thank you. Okay. Thank you. In Barhaven, Ron, you're on City News. Ron.
Yeah, hi, Rob. I believe it was Bill C-16, and this was compelled speech laws in Canada. There was a case, perfect example, a 14-year-old girl was going to be chemically, I don't know if it was sterilized, to become a male, and he referred to the child as his biological daughter, and they put him in jail for that. And that wasn't that long ago, Rob.
Okay, I'm not familiar with this story.
C-16, it's compelled speech. It's the one where the Supreme Court stated even factual speech can be deemed hate speech. That's where we live.
Yeah, I've never heard of that. I don't know what you're talking about. You may very well be making stuff up. I don't know. David in Ottawa South. David, you're on City News. David.
Yes, Rob.
David, how could you be more free tomorrow than you are today?
Well, I think basically that's government interference. I'm not going to say free from taxes. We had to pay for our services somehow.
Right.
I think we can hold people accountable as to how they do that and everything else, but we just can't be free from tax. But I'm going to ask a question.
Okay.
Freedom of or freedom from?
Freedom of or freedom from?
Yeah, like I can have freedom of religion,
yes,
which gives me the right to express my religion.
Mm-hmm.
But what about freedom of from religion? So that's somebody who doesn't want religion involved in their life at all, so they're going to be free from it.
Sure, yeah.
And again, as people have said, I'd like him to nail down exactly what he means. What are the hard nuts and bolts of the issue?
Well, I think so,
What kind of freedom? Give me an example of how I'm not free and how you're going to fix it. Give me something on the table to chew on.
I mean, when you say freedom of religion, freedom from religion, should that prohibit, say, a Sikh from driving a bus in Montreal or something?
No, it shouldn't. That's freedom of religion.
Yeah. Okay.
Freedom from religion means the opposite.
Okay.
Because in my life, I had the right to say, I don't want to see religion in my face anywhere. That's freedom from religion. Freedom of religion means people have the right to express their religion.
Okay. All right. Thank you, David. Thank you. Okay. Bye. 750-1310. Few lines available there. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Riding requires attention and focus. No distractions, no moment of unawareness, because one brief moment can cost a lifetime of other moments. Everyone deserves to arrive home.
The Maritime provinces are home to some of the oldest settlements in Canadian history. But did you know that one of the first was actually started by black settlers? Take a minute to learn about the rise and untimely fall of Africville. Black people have lived in Nova Scotia since before the founding of Halifax in 1749, but it wasn't until after the American Revolution in the late 1700s and early 1800s that large groups of black settlers began to arrive in the province, many of whom were former slaves promised freedom and land in Nova Scotia. What they encountered when they arrived, however, was racist treatment by their white neighbors and government officials. This pushed many black people to build homes on the outskirts of town instead. But despite the area receiving little support from government officials and lacking necessities like functioning sewage systems, access to clean water, and proper garbage disposals, the tight-knit community persevered, and so Africville was born. For more than 150 years, the small community grew, expanding from just a few homes to a population of over 400 people. Everything changed, however, in 1964 when plans for a new bridge and the idea of urban renewal prompted the municipality to set its sights on Africville's land. Instead of investing in the community, officials approved a relocation program that promised free job training and employment assistance to help residents through relocation. But the reality wasn't so kind. Residents had their belongings moved in city dump trucks, and homes were demolished immediately after their owners left. Of the 400-plus people living in Africville, only 14 residents held clear legal titles to their land, so the rest were only given $500 with the promise of more social aid in the future. Not much else was actually done to support Africville and its residents until 2001, when a United Nations report called for reparations to be paid to the community. In 2010, Halifax Mayor Peter Kelly apologized for the atrocities against Africville as part of a $4.5 million compensation deal. In 2021, Councillor Lindell Smith put forward a 7-part motion to plan for the future of Africville alongside local organizations and the descendants of former residents. Today, there's a public park and museum where Africville once stood to teach visitors about the history of the land and its community. If you've never heard of Africville, you're not alone. The tragic story of this small black community in Nova Scotia is not as well known as it should be.
It's time to talk back.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Pierre Poilievre is pitching freedom. Freedom. You're not as free as you should be. What does that mean to you? Brian in Rockland. Brian, good morning, Brian.
Hey, morning, Rob.
Hey, Brian.
I'm going to preface this by saying I did work for the federal government for 30 years.
Okay.
And Pierre is quite correct to reduce the size of government. They are the gatekeepers. They are the people that are coming up with new regulations every day, because the government does two things very well. One, they spend money and not necessarily spend it wisely. And two, they grow. Now, when they grow, they're always looking for something new to do so they can grow more. And it's a vicious circle.
Right.
So, cut the size of government and get rid of a lot of these useless regulations, because government never gets rid of regulations. It's like the law. They just pile on
So
more
it's like
and
the
more.
classic small c thing, lower government, smaller government, lower taxes.
Yep.
Get out of my life.
Get out of my life,
I'll be more free.
I'm an adult. I can look after myself. Stop
Right.
feeding
Yeah.
people like children.
Yeah. You're not my real dad. Get out of here. Right. Yeah. I hear that. Right. Yeah. I know. I know what you mean. That's a classic small C fiscal conservative thing. You know, that sings right to me. I wish he would just kind of say that.
Socially liberal, because Pierre Poilievre is socially liberal as well, like I am. You know, nobody cares who you go to bed with or who you go home with. Who cares?
I don't hear anything like that from him. He doesn't even go into social conservatism very much, other than to say, you're free to worship whatever God you want to worship or whatever, right? So
that's right.
That's about the closest he ever gets to it.
Well, it's because the social conservatives aren't voting for him because he's.
Well, no, they have their standard bearer in Leslyn Lewis, right? So yeah. Okay, thank you, Brian. Thank you. Yeah, the classic small C. Government is too big, taxes are too high, kind of thing. Mary in Gatineau. Mary.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, Mary.
Go ahead.
It's a real shame that you're not as free as you should be, Mary.
Gosh. I'm sad for my kids, really.
Okay.
So I have like two different angles about this. So one big one that I'm about to have to swallow a pretty steep invoice is I had a rental house. And I decided to invest. I'm like, okay, where can I make money? So I invested in a rental house, rented it a few years. And then when the boom happened, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to cash in on this and make some good money. So,
good for you.
I don't have a pension or anything like that.
Yep.
So I made about $100,000 in profit.
Good for you.
Well, my accountant's probably going to be in the next few days going to probably tell me I owe at least $30,000 just in capital gain.
Yeah.
So for me being smart, trying to make money, because like the previous guy said, 57% of our money goes to the government.
Tax.
And then here we're trying to make investments and all this, but then out of the blink of an eye, the government did nothing. I'm the one who was smart enough to try to invest, make money, but they cashed in $30,000 just like that, just because I was smart about it, but I have to give them part of my profit.
Right.
So that's, with all the inflation, with a family of 5, when you go grocery shopping now, it used to cost, $50 for 5-6 grocery bags, and now it's $200-300 for 4 grocery bags. So it's just, everything is just so expensive now. So,
well, according to the latest food report, it's for a family of 4, it's $1,200 a month in groceries now.
Oh, gosh, if they're teenagers, that number is not
$1,200 a month.
Yeah, but if you think about teenagers, I do groceries like every week. Actually, I'm kind of lucky. I'll pick up the food on your way back home because I'd be at a grocery store like every second day.
Right,
but every time, I'm so fanatic with numbers, so every time I go to the grocery store and I see either the volume of the food being...
Okay, Mary, I'm sorry, Mary, your phone is just cutting out, but just while
This probably
tax relief is your big thing, right? You think you're paying too much tax.
Yeah,
and then on the Quebec side, you're paying the highest provincial taxes in Quebec.
Oh, exactly. And if you ever want to come and have fun, come and take a ride with your car, and hopefully you'll be able to.
There's not much difference in the Ottawa roads. There was a time, Mary, thanks for your call. There was a time when you could close your eyes and leave Ontario, and you knew as soon as you hit Quebec, because it went from a nice smooth drive to clackety, 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 clack, and you knew you were in Quebec. But not anymore. The roads are that bad in Ontario now, too, at least in Ottawa anyway. Mark in Ottawa. Mark, you're on City News. Mark, I'm good. Mark, how could you be freer than you are?
Well, like I've heard some of your callers say, they find it kind of vague, like what he's saying when it comes to freedom, and I agree. He really should kind of give us a little bit more.
Yeah.
I know he's feeding on it, and that's fine. I like the guy, and I don't and I'm not right or left. He's actually made me kind of want to join the party, as a member.
Okay.
the way I look at it is, I've always felt free living here. I've lived here my whole life. I've never had to deal with, the things that I've seen now where people are triggered or offended by certain things, certain speech or whatever. And our governments are trying to, I guess, censor it even more. Where in the States, I find their laws and our laws are completely different when it comes to free speech. And some people will argue with me, I'm not an expert on it, but one day I had to argue with friends that there's no way we're more freer than the States. And then I had to look it up, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. In the United States, as long as you don't act on it violently, you can pretty much say whatever you want.
Pretty much.
And here, no. Every time you do something or say something, you can get jailed for it or whatever.
Okay.
And it's
so this may go to the whole cancel culture kind of thing, Mark.
Well, it's more of a real democracy. We're not a real democracy. We're neither is the States, but they just got more rights. You know what I mean? And it's why? I've seen.
You feel as though the environment around free. We don't even call it free speech in Canada; it's free expression. But that we're even though it's in our Constitution, you have freedom of expression. You can express yourself freely. It's a fundamental right. But you don't believe that it's really a fundamental right.
No, I don't.
No, you don't think so. Okay, Mark. Thank you. Okay. Laura in Renfrew. Laura.
Oh, hi. How are you?
Good, Laura.
Good. I
wish I was more free,
I know. I've got all the answers.
You do? Okay, Laura. Yeah. How could you be a freer person?
Well, I'm just talking about Canada in general, okay? I just don't like the way SNC-Lavalin went down with Trudeau, the integrity part, that he wasn't made responsible for any of that, and we couldn't inquire properly. Yeah. So we don't have freedom to get rid of a prime minister.
Well, we did. There have been 2 elections since then, Laura. 2.
Okay, but there's no impeachment, right? It has.
Well, we had 2 elections. We had 2 elections.
Well, he got a minority. He didn't get a majority, right?
I didn't like it either. We could go back and litigate it all over again. But there were 2 election campaigns. There were 2 leaders of the Conservative Party.
Okay, well, that was just one thing. Yeah. Another thing too is the taxes were brought in to help pay for the war. Okay. Well, the war's been long over, right?
Yeah, income tax.
I've got a daughter. She's 21. She's a PSW. She works hard. And she said, they took $600 off my pay. And she said, I worked for that. I said, welcome to the real world. That's taxes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a lot of money. I mean, she's working the hours, working hard, and has to pay that. Yep. I'd like to see more incentives for the young, instead of taxing them so high. I mean, when we had Kathleen Wynne with the electrical, she gave one of her young staffers a $500,000 wage salary as a favor to her. That was our money that was given away. There seems to be no accountability.
Well, yeah, I don't know if it was a young staffer, but her senior advisors, her chief of staff made more. I remember there was a news report. She was paying her chief of staff more than Barack Obama was paying his chief of staff. Okay, Laura, I got it. I wish you people, I wish the callers you called earlier, because we're right at a time. It was a little quiet in the early part of the hour, but we're out of time now. I can't take any more calls. Coming up after the 11 o'clock news. What are we doing after the 11 o'clock news?
Tech stocks.
Oh, yes, tech stocks. What is going on with Netflix? Was down 35% yesterday. Elon Musk wants to take over Twitter, and we're going to talk about Shopify has had a brutal first 4 months of the year on the stock market as well. The tech tumult is coming up on the Rob Snow Show, City News.
Is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News. Now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, April 21st. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 10 degrees, 11 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. A surprisingly high number of new COVID cases reported across Ontario today. More than 3.5 times the number of cases reported yesterday. In the province today, 5,038. The number of hospital cases and ICU patients, though, did remain about the same, just both slightly higher than yesterday. The province also reporting another 17 deaths blamed on COVID across the province. City News Time 11:01. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Rain on the way for most areas and will continue until about 8 o'clock tonight. The high today near 11 degrees and 4 for the low. Tomorrow we'll have varying amounts of sun and cloud, favoring the cloud at times. High near 12. For today, the high 11.
And right now, 10 degrees in Ottawa, 11 degrees in Smiths Falls. 6 weeks from today, we are heading to the Provincial Polls. City News reporter Richard Southern says some new polling numbers out show this one could be a nail-biter.
We've had 2 big polls out in the past 24 hours. One from Main Street Research shows the Conservatives with an 8-point lead, just barely in majority territory. It also shows, though, the Liberals surging. Main Street has the Liberals at 28%, up 8 points. A brand new poll just out today from Abacus shows the Conservatives with only a 4-point lead. Again, the Liberals surging in this poll. The Liberals up to 32% support. Both of these polls, though, have the NDP trailing off down between 10 and 11 points. NDP leader Andrea Horvath.
Well, Richard, as I said, the most important part of those polls, in my estimation, is the fact that the majority of people want to get rid of Doug Ford. We have a whole campaign ahead of us.
Just 42 days until we head to the ballot box. Richard Southern, City News.
City News Time, 11:02. Well, it's not exactly the birthday present Queen Elizabeth would be hoping for from our country, turning 96 today. A new poll from Canada, though, finds a majority of us no longer want to be involved with the monarchy. With the numbers, here's City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney.
To celebrate this big birthday, 51% of Canadians say they want to show the monarchy the door. The new poll from the Angus Reid Institute finds that slim majority wants to end the practice of having the Queen or a king as our head of state. And it's a big jump from 2016 when only 38% of people held that view. While we're no longer loving the royals, we still have respect for the Queen. In fact, around 2/3 of Canadians still view Elizabeth favorably. Prince Charles, on the other hand, only gets positive marks from 29%. president, and he's next in line for the throne. While some may love the thought of becoming a republic, it will not be an easy task. In fact, it requires the House of Commons, the Senate, and all 10 provinces to unanimously agree. On top of that, it would cost taxpayers a lot of money to change our system of government and remove any mention of the royals from our laws and regulations. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News Time, 11:03. The latest millionaire in Ottawa, a father of one, Robert Miles, picked up an instant $1 million jackpot ticket at the Loblaws on Merivale. He tells the OLG he was checking the numbers, thought he won $1,000. He says he was shocked and happy with that amount, then realized that shock and happiness went way up. Robert says he wants to pay some bills, invest, buy a condo, and help out his family with that lottery cash. Now, you could join Robert in the newest Millionaires Club, or at least very close to it now. You only have until midnight tomorrow to pick up CHEO 50/50 tickets. Half the pot and a new Ford F-150 is the grand prize. So far, the winner's share is now over $910,000. You can order your ticket at cheo5050.ca until midnight tomorrow night. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News. 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
We are calling it Tech Stock Tumult. We have Netflix in focus right now. We're watching Twitter. You know, the big sell-off in Netflix yesterday. Netflix shares basically crashed yesterday, and they're down again today. They're down again today, another 5%. Twitter. Elon Musk wants to take over Twitter, and it's been a terrible start to the year for shares in Shopify, which is going to do a stock split, and there are reports of another takeover. Shopify wants to take over a startup, another company. So let's talk about it with, pardon me. Sorry about that. Hans Albrecht is back, Vice President at Horizons ETFs. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Hey, it's great to hear from you.
Good to be here.
Well, never a dull moment when you're watching the markets. That's for darn sure.
Absolutely. The Netflix carnage is something to watch, isn't it?
Yeah. What do you make of it? What's going on here? What do you think is happening here?
I think what we're seeing in the tech area in particular, and Netflix being kind of a great example of this, is investors like stories with strong positive trends. And I think when the direction is positive, they're willing to pay, just about anything for that momentum that's going in the right direction. Once that ship turns around, the performance can be dizzyingly poor in the opposite direction. It unravels completely. And so, it's not like, they did add a few subscribers if you sort of net out the Russian effect. What worried people is they're predicting a drop of 2 million subscribers over the next little while. Now, to keep that in perspective, they added 37 million subscribers in 2020. So in the grand scheme of things, this isn't a big thing, but I think what it is showing is that the environment is a little bit different than it was, post-COVID or post the sort of downturn that we saw in 2020. We saw good positive momentum for about a year and a half, and the glass was always half full, and now it's a bit half empty, right? Those dark clouds are sort of overhanging these stocks, and you mentioned Shopify. That's another example. In a normal, more positive environment with positive momentum, maybe that stock reacts much more positively to a stock split, but it doesn't this time, and I think that's just a part and parcel of the environment that we're in right now.
Right. So I used to hear this term when markets get frothy, 99 frothy before the meltdown, when markets are running red hot. Price to perfection. The stock is priced to perfection. So $700 a share was the 52-week high on Netflix. Today it's, now it's at its 52-week low. $211 is the trade on Netflix. So it's down year to date. It's down 64%. So I mean, is that a case of a company that has stock that was maybe priced to perfection? In other words, the everything was going right, and then circumstances changed?
I think what investors, well, first of all, there are a couple things. I think, the pandemic sort of brought to the fore a lot of companies that would directly benefit from people staying at home, watching more TV, binging on all the shows they like. So, these companies got particularly, juicy premiums as compared to some of the other ones. Even for tech stocks, they did very, very well. We saw, some companies like Peloton sort of benefit from that same kind of thing. As the economy reopens and perhaps we look to the end of the pandemic, these stocks aren't going to be as popular. What specifically for Netflix, though, I think what investors maybe underappreciated is that it's become a very fractured sort of industry. You have now a lot more competition for those eyeballs, and you've got maybe 4 or 5 other streaming services that are competing with them, from companies like Disney that have very, very deep pockets. They're able to throw a lot of money at content, and I think that's going to cause Netflix to have to up their game as well. They're going to have to spend even more on content, and that's a difficult thing for a stock that's definitely throwing off some cash, but maybe not enough for the amount that they're going to have to spend. So when I look at that stock, yes, it's down a fair bit from the highs, but I'm looking for a positive catalyst, and I don't see it at the moment.
And the competition seems to just grow all the time in the streaming space.
It grows and grows,
right.
Rob, and that's a big issue there, because you have these other services. I think everyone could kind of tolerate having to get Netflix. You get to see everything you need essentially on one service. Now that this has sort of been parceled out to different services, I think there's a little bit of pushback. Netflix raised prices, and they thought they could do that indefinitely, and they did it into a much more difficult environment. I think consumers are pushing back against that and saying, well, look, I can't afford a lot more for this, because now I've got to buy Disney, I've got to buy HBO, I've got to buy all these other ones. And interestingly, I'm hearing that piracy is starting to sort of take off a little bit again. People are starting to download movies because they simply don't feel like paying for 4 or 5 services.
Right. So they're going to crack down on sharing passwords, and maybe they might introduce commercials for some lower, you could subscribe, I guess, to a lower price service if you were willing to watch a commercial.
Exactly, a lower tier service.
Yeah, like a kind of a discount Netflix, I guess. So,
well, hey, we're back to cable TV again, aren't we? We're going to have to watch commercials again.
I guess so. Yeah. Okay, so that's the Netflix story. Twitter is actually up year to date. It's up 10% year to date. What do you think of the Elon Musk bid for Twitter, and where do you think this is headed? What's going on with Twitter right now?
Well, I think it's put Twitter in play, at least in the minds of some players out there who can afford Twitter, and there aren't many like that, particularly ones that aren't going to want to get themselves into some regulatory issues. But it's developing into an interesting story. We've got all these crazy terms. They sound like they're a little bit out of an action movie: poison pills and white knights and things like that. So I think at this point, Mr. Musk was perhaps a little bit optimistic that he might grab the company. I think it's in their best interest and their fiduciary duty on the board side of Twitter to say no and to sort of canvass the environment for a better buyer. So perhaps we see a white knight, as they say, come in with a more friendly approach to buying the company. And in the meantime, Twitter has instituted this poison pill, which essentially allows existing shareholders to buy stock at a discount that dilutes the shares of Elon Musk's current holding, makes it much more difficult for him to mount an aggressive purchase for the company out there in the market. So they're utilizing all these interesting little tools that are available to them to fend off an offer by him. But I think that's a little bit anti-competitive in my view. I'm not sure if a poison pill should really be allowed in most cases. They are used quite a bit, particularly back in 2020. We saw a lot of companies use that in order to fend off purchases of their companies at very low prices.
I should mention CNBC, by way of NBC News, is reporting right now that Elon Musk has secured the financing to buy Twitter. It's a very quick story. Tesla CEO Elon Musk said in a filing Thursday he has secured $46.5 billion in financing to buy Twitter, mostly with borrowed money. It shows a group of banks led by Morgan Stanley is prepared to lend Elon Musk $25.5 billion, including a separate $12.5 billion loan pledged to the value of Musk's Tesla shares. Musk, in return, would provide $21 billion in equity financing.
I'm not sure shareholders are going to be thrilled to sell the company down at these sort of prices. I think it's a great franchise. I think it's one where management hasn't been able to figure out, how to monetize all those eyeballs that they have. And it's the premier social media chatting service. There's no question in my mind. It's the brand. Okay. But it's a company that really hasn't gone anywhere. If you look at a lot of these big tech stocks, they've done very well over the last 10 years. Twitter hasn't really done. It's underwhelmed, let's say, from a performance perspective. This stock was $70 not long ago. Are shareholders going to be happy with a $54 takeover? I have my doubts.
Yeah, I mean, in 9 years, you've made 12%. 12% in 9 years. For a high-flying tech stock like Twitter, there were better places to put your money. For example, Shopify. Shopify, if you were early into Shopify, you're still up 1,700%. Okay? So all things in perspective, but the thing is, you're down 60% so far this year on your Shopify shares if you bought them in January. It's been brutal. But do you still like Shopify?
I do.
Yeah.
I like Shopify at these levels. I think technology is looking very interesting. So I did a little chart the other day of sort of the growth and technology versus some of these more kind of defensive sectors, and we've really come back down to what I call trend line. We're back to trend line. So for a few years there, we were concerned that a lot of the market momentum was coming from sort of 7 or 8 particularly high-priced tech stocks. We've seen a reversion back down in the pricing of those particular names. I think some of those names are starting to look quite compelling, and I think Shopify is another example of how much these things have come off. I think they're definitely worth another look. I think you have to believe that these are for Shopify, you've got to believe that e-commerce is going to be a thing for the next 20, 30 years. I think it is going to be an important thing.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be a thing. Yeah, I think it's going to be a thing.
Exactly, and Shopify is a premier brand in that space. So I think you have to think they're going to figure out how to do well. And I think it's a healthy thing. We've had the entire sector reset, and as they say, it's every now and then a sell-off is a healthy thing, and I don't think it's a time to be fearful. I think it's a time to perhaps add to positions in stocks in companies that you really think are going to be around for the long term. And I think that's the case in a lot of these areas of technology where they're really building a foundation for our new world.
Okay. Look, always so interesting. Of course, I just want to add the proviso, everybody speak to your own financial advisor. This is not financial advice in any way, but I really want to thank you for your insight today. Thanks, Hans. We'll speak soon.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
Bye-bye. Yeah. Hans Albrecht is Vice President at Horizons ETFs. Randall Denley. We're back. We're going to talk about the official opposition here in Ontario, the opposition parties, I should say, the Liberals and the New Democrats, just weeks before the election call. A race that appears to be tightening. Randall says, Stephen Del Duca, Andrea Horvath, you have to up your game. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
It's only walking through the fire they learn just who you are. If you talk while your mind is racing, you can't say what's really true. If you love while your heart is racing, it gets hard to follow through. You get caught stealing daylight, you're gonna have to do the time. 'Cause pennies don't fall from heaven, and a nickel ain't worth a dime. You can't blame the water, you can't blame the drink. You can always blame the devil, he gets blamed for a lot of things. But darling, I can tell you that blaming won't get you far. It's only walking through the fire they learn just who you are. Can be angry as lightning, bitter as the wind, can rattle your sword like a storm coming in. Can be cold as a rock, mean as a snake, hard as a bullet, never own your mistake. Put your money on the same old pony, he ain't paid out yet. Seems he always comes up lame, you always lose your bet. You can't get to paradise trading on magic beans, 'cause reaching for the sky is harder than it seems. You can't blame the water, you can't blame the drink. You can always blame the devil, he gets blamed for a lot of things. Darling, I can tell you that blaming won't get you far. It's only walking through the fire that you learn just who you are.
Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Hey, let's talk Ontario politics with author and Post Media columnist Randall Denley back with us on City News. Good morning, Randall.
Hi, Rob.
Yeah, great to hear from you. So there's a lot of polling out actually this week. The Ipsos poll has the PCs at 35, Liberals at 32, and the NDP way behind at 23, with the Liberals making some gains specifically in the 905 area. It's a 4-point lead for the PCs according to Abacus data, but Main Street has still a big lead for the PCs. PCs 39, and then a real just kind of a battle for second place between the other two parties. Interesting that the Abacus data poll says the top issues are almost all, with the exception of healthcare, they're all economic related issues. Cost of living, number one issue, cost of living, followed by housing affordability, then healthcare, then tax relief. I took a lot of calls. People, tax relief is making a comeback as like a big issue now. And jobs, employment security, these kinds of things. These are the issues now. Not COVID. Your column this week for the National Post is kind of a clarion call to the opposition, like, get your act together. What has disappointed you with the opposition parties?
Well, I just don't see either Del Duca from the Liberals or Andrea Horvath. They haven't done much yet. It's surprising to me, Rob. There's 6 weeks to the election. The actual election is going to fly by pretty quickly. Neither one of these parties are in a great position. To me, they should be out working really hard, but you just don't see it. You don't hear from their leaders. The big thing Del Duca did this week was say, handgun ban, that's it. You might have noted that handgun ban didn't fall on the list of issues that you just cited, which I think is a pretty accurate one. So you went, well, how connected is a leader of the Liberal Party, living in the world like the rest of us, hearing all the same news as we are? I think I should talk about right now is handguns.
Yeah.
Nothing economic, nothing to do with jobs or inflation, handguns. It just kind of makes me shake my head. But, and the NDP's solve this week is Why did they delay bringing back the legislation for 3 days until the budget next week? Why, we wanted to be in the House questioning the Premier. Okay, but really you should be happy they did that, because you can be out knocking on doors and trying to get votes. That's what you should be doing. And nobody cares what they say in question period right now.
No.
They need to go talk
you
to
could
voters.
stop. I think you could stop 100 people in the street and ask them when question period is in the Ontario legislature. They wouldn't even be able to tell you when it is.
Certainly a boutique audience, let's put it that way. Yeah. It's odd. I mean, this is the fourth election as leader for Andrea Horwath, and most leaders don't get 4 cracks at it. You think by now she'd have the hang of it, right?
You would think.
And she's got the most to lose in this, really, because she's the leader of the opposition. She's got 39 seats. There's not much chance of going up. There's an excellent chance of going down. So if the party goes back to third place, surely that's the end of her as leader. So you think that would be motivating? It's interesting that those polls show the Liberals climbing up a bit, even though their leader is seen in third place as, your choice as premier. So there's a disconnect there. It will be interesting to me to see what happens in the campaign when we have debates and people see the 3 leaders on the same stage and get a better sense of them. Is that going to be a plus or a minus for the other 2 parties? But people need a choice. They need an electable choice. Not everybody likes Doug Ford, God knows. So, there's more so-called progressive people in Ontario than there are conservative people. They're looking for a choice. And I think right now both these parties are dropping the ball by not presenting a solid plan to do something that relates to the problems that people have right now.
Yeah. Now, surely to goodness, I'm sorry to interrupt. I agree with you on Andrea Horwath. I'm surprised she even has a 4th kick at the can, let alone the idea that she would ever get a 5th. But for Del Duca, just how difficult is it going to be for him in his own riding up there in Vaughan?
Well, he lost by 8,000 votes the last time. And to a cabinet minister, it's not high profile, but that's still a lot to overcome.
Yeah.
And if he can't win his own seat, it's extremely hard for him to continue as leader, I think. I mean, if there was some huge upsurge of Liberal support and somebody would step aside, by-election, save seat, maybe. But part of the problem he's got, I think, is that he's only got a handful of seats now, so almost his entire team are rookies. So there's nothing they can point back to say, well, I've been your MPP for the last 4 years. Yeah. Look at the good things I've done in the community, or I represented this, I've said or done something. They're all new faces, and because the party hasn't put forward yet any kind of a comprehensive platform, what have they got to talk about at the doors? There have been little bits and pieces of policy, but there hasn't been something that's got a theme that pulls it all together. So when you knock at a door, you say, elect the Liberals, here's what you're going to get. Yeah. This is what we're selling. You got all these salesmen out on the street, but you haven't really said what your product is. And I think for a party in their position, they should have had a platform out by now and say, we know what we're going to do. Here it is. And we're going to start talking about it because we've only got a few weeks to do it.
Yeah, and it better say something about clearly what the issues are. And it's economic anxiety, I think, right now because of the inflation situation right now.
Yeah, and Ford has been criticized by a lot of people for giving them back some of their own money or failing to take it in gas taxes, but I know some people don't like it, and I wouldn't have put, canceling license plate fees or worse, refunding them as the top of the list of things that I would do. But still, at least it shows the government has some awareness that people are getting pinched by inflation. They want a little bit of help. So here's a little bit of help. A buck's a buck. So I think he's more in tune with people now than the other two parties. And they haven't really criticized it much because they know that most people like it, even if they don't like the specifics. They like the idea of, hey, times are tight, I got a little check. So I think he's closer to the mark so far in terms of what they're going to do. We'll find out more in next week's budget when that budget will lay out their election plan. So at that point, we'll have a pretty strong idea of what a new PC government would look like. And I think that there was a window for the other two parties to get out ahead of that and say, well, here's what we would do. Let's get some headlines before the PCs start grabbing them all. And Ford has been announcing so many things. He and his cabinet ministers, they're everywhere all the time in your community announcing something. And I don't see the other parties really doing anything to compete with that, to, do something that the news media are going to cover, get some public attention. It's like they're waiting for somebody to fire the starter's pistol. It's a very odd approach. We'll see if it pays off for them, I guess.
All right. Great to hear from you this week, Randall Denley. Thank you.
Okay, Rob. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Randall Denley, Ottawa journalist and author. Read him this week about the Ford government and the opposition parties in the National Post. Coming up right after the news, our look at world news with Elliot Tepper, International Affairs Professor at Carleton University. This is City News.
The Calgary Stampede is a world-renowned festival celebrating wrangling, bull riding, and everything cowboy. But did you know that many people credit its origins to a Black Canadian? Take a minute to meet John Ware. The word cowboy has racist roots. Before the American Civil War, white ranchers were called cowhands, but the enslaved black men and women working alongside them were actually referred to as cowboys to infantilize and disrespect black ranchers. The legend of cowboy John Ware is full of impressive feats and awe-inspiring skill, including the ability to train even the wildest broncos and easily hold a horse on its back. But the real story of John Ware is one that starts from more humble beginnings. Ware was born into slavery in the United States, gaining his freedom towards the end of the American Civil War in 1865. Ware's skills with cattle ranching developed as he traveled throughout the United States, eventually settling in a town southwest of present-day Calgary, Alberta, which made him one of the first black pioneers in the prairies. Over time, news of Ware and his amazing cowboy skills began to spread, and people came from across North America to witness his horsemanship and skills as a rancher. Eventually, Ware went on to own many of his own ranches. In 1892, he became the first man in Western Canada to earn the title of steer wrestler, and Ware's feats in local contests set the stage for the Calgary Stampede Rodeo we know today. In September of 1905, Ware was killed in a freak accident with his horse, and more than 10,000 mourners from across the region attended his funeral, making it one of the largest in Alberta history. Though his true story is difficult to separate from the legends around him, Ware's status as a respected forefather of cowboy skill continues to be celebrated today. Ware has dedicated monuments across Alberta, including several sites near his first ranch, a Calgary school in his namesake, and a building at the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology.
News in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, April 21st. Good morning, I'm Danielle Bain. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, mostly cloudy skies and 12 degrees. Here's what's making news this hour. A large number of COVID cases are being reported today in Ontario, 5,038. The province does say, though, the count is much higher today because it added cases that were not reported in the last few days due to service degradation in its case and contact management system. Ontario is reporting 1,626 people in hospital with COVID-19 today, a slight decrease from yesterday. The province is also reporting 207 COVID-19 patients in intensive care. 19 new deaths are being recorded from the virus as well. Charges have been laid in an investigation into the death of a 38-year-old man from Pembroke. 44-year-old Craig Mains of Pembroke has been arrested and charged with manslaughter, criminal negligence, and other drug trafficking charges related to meth and fentanyl. Mains is being held for a bail hearing scheduled for today. A personal support worker is facing charges after an 87-year-old woman was assaulted at a long-term care home. The Ottawa Police Elder Abuse Section investigated a case reported by the woman's family. 25-year-old Natalie Mooney of Ottawa is being charged with one count of assault. And in sports, heartbreak in Toronto last night as the Raptors dropped Game 3 of the series to Philly in overtime. Joel Embiid hit a game-winning three for the Sixers with under 1 second left in OT. Raptors head into Game 4 on Saturday, down 3-0. City News Time, 11:33. I'm Danielle Bain for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is our weekly deep dive into the world news of the week. It's called The World with Professor Elliot Tepper, Distinguished Senior Fellow, Norman Paterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University. Welcome back, Professor.
Thank you. Good morning, Rob. So much news, so little time.
Yes, it's another period of fast-moving developments, so let's try and cover as much as we can. Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that Russian forces have now liberated Mariupol, apart from a massive steel plant, which is he has ordered blockaded. Meantime, Kiev has called for urgent talks, calling for help saving the lives of its own fighters, along with civilians in Mariupol. Limited civilian evacuations went ahead yesterday, expected to continue today. Why is this city so important to Russia?
It's a key link in their drive to make a land bridge between the areas they already took from Ukraine in 2014 in the Donbass and Crimea, which they took at the same time. This is also the most, in effect, if you head from north to south, it's the most Russian-speaking down to lesser Russian-speaking areas. So they say they're liberating the Russians of the area. They need to capture this city in order to complete that link. And also, if they do capture it, and apparently they have, at great human cost, it opens up the possibility they could then move out from that area, right in the center geographically of that area, and move troops back west. So it's a strategic point. It does seem to have come under their control at great cost. As you pointed out, he said, we don't have to conquer it any further. We've taken all but this fortified area. We want to, the goodness of our hearts, not have to go into there. So we'll just starve everybody out instead.
Oh, okay. There has been, and we've talked about this over the last couple of weeks, that Putin wants to be able to talk of or speak to, show off some sort of victory for the VE Day in Russia parade, which happens the day after VE Day in Europe, Victory in Europe Day, which is May 8th. They celebrated May 9th in Russia. Is that still prominent? Do you think this is still valid, do you think, Professor?
If that is the goal, and it is certainly a possibility because it's a very important date in Russian history. It's a great patriotic day. This is the day when Nazi Germany was defeated. And remember, he keeps saying, we're here to liberate the Russians of this non-state, this false state, Ukraine, from Nazis. So it's a very important goal potentially. But what it does mean is that they are going to, if they want to achieve it by that point, follow the Aleppo model of conquest. We've known how they behaved in Syria, and I think that's one of the two interesting changes since we last talked about this, Rob. Okay. One is they now have a brand new commander of all of their forces going into Ukraine, and they brought in the general who was in charge of Syria. So he is fully aware of the tactics needed, ruthless, brutal, war criminal, crimes against humanity type of activities. And he's brought, that's the general now in charge overall of coordination. There's a chance possibly that whereas the Russian military was overestimated at the start of this war, it may be underestimated now. They have shorter supply lines and so forth. The other major change is that more and more weapons are now actually getting into defensive weapons shipped by the West are now getting into Ukraine, but they now have the longer supply lines to defend.
Okay. From there, let's move to this latest missile test that's in the news today. The Russian Defense Ministry released a video of what it says was a successful launch of a nuclear-capable missile, the Sarmat Super Heavy Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. It was launched from a spaceport in the northwestern part of the country and then landed in the far eastern part of the country.
Yeah, successfully.
Long trip.
Yes.
And Putin said it's food for thought, quote, food for thought for those who try to threaten Russia.
Yes.
What do you make of that?
Well, the short answer is this missile is designed and announced. It can go from the North Pole to the South Pole, let alone from one end of this large country to the other. This is a missile which is designed to evade any missile defense system anywhere on Earth, carry multiple nuclear warheads, and strike anywhere on Earth. So when this was announced, this was actually goes back to March 2018 when a whole series of these missiles were announced. It was said that this will now make Russia invincible. No weapon system on Earth can evade them, and they can deliver, this is 200 tons of power, multiple warheads, all nuclear-capable warheads, and there's also some other, they can shoot down missiles, it's a very powerful new weapon system, but it was announced earlier, so the NATO forces, since you've asked, who's this aimed against, anybody that's supporting Ukraine is now being given yet another message by Mr. Putin that there possibly is a penalty to be paid taking on the Russian military.
Yeah, you see, this is something when I was doing some reading about this type of missile. I didn't know this, and if I don't know it, maybe some of the listeners don't know it either. I always thought the missile goes up, it has a warhead on it. The missile goes up, it can then drop 10 nuclear warheads onto targets.
Or 15 or 20, depending. It's called MIRV. This is not a new technology in terms of ICBMs. It's been during the Cold War. It was developed by all parties involved.
Right.
But putting it on top of a hypersonic missile that can change course in midair and can evade missiles, any missile defense, as they say, any missile defense system does seem to be a game changer if it's all true.
Oh, man. It's frightening stuff. Okay, from there, the news just gets better. Meantime, China has COVID zero. Yeah, it's doing tremendous harm to China's economy. It's also hitting the global economy. If you think China is kind of the wholesaler to the world. So if you have a city of 25 million people like Shanghai shut down, it causes great logistical problems, not just throughout the Chinese economy, but it has ripples throughout the global economy. And obviously the Chinese officials know this, which makes me wonder why they're so insistent on pursuing this COVID zero strategy.
As we move into a discussion of China, we should link the two stories we were talking about.
Okay.
That is the Russian invasion of a neighboring state just because they felt like doing so. This has been a great Putin gift to China. China is unambiguously already a winner out of this conflict because all of the forces, Western forces, democratic forces, including in Asia, were reorganizing to counter an aggressively emerging China. Now everybody's focusing of necessity on Europe. It's a huge gift, this distraction that Mr. Putin has provided. But also, of course, there's some lessons we can talk about that China might have to take into account. On COVID zero COVID, Mr. Xi Jinping himself has put his own prestige on the line, saying the Communist Party of China any other country on earth. So our model is better than anyone. And besides that, I'm a better leader than anyone. So when it comes out in November that I'm up for being confirmed basically leader for life, of course I will get that based on my zero COVID policies, among other things. So that's kind of the big story. In terms of Shanghai, we're all focusing on Shanghai, and of necessity, it's one of the world's great cities, a great hub. Spare parts cannot leave right now from Shanghai to get into other places inside China, which will now have ripple effects. You mentioned accurately the ripple effects. This is a very major story. The world's second largest economy, perhaps already the first largest in PPP, purchasing power parity, is now being severely disrupted in the name of containing this virus, which of course we know originated in Wuhan. And they're prestige is on the line. There's 23 cities under lockdown, not just Shanghai. Other regions in the Northeast, in particular, which is an agricultural heartland and an industrial heartland next to it, are preventing trucks from entering, Rob, from other areas, saying,
Yes.
oh, we can't trust that because they may be bringing in COVID. People are being locked into their apartments in Shanghai, and then others are being evicted from their apartments in Shanghai to make quarantine centers out of them, because there has to be some place you can put all these people that potentially are already infected. It's a major story for China, for its government, but also for global supply chains.
Okay. Very quickly, I read a piece from a pair of academics in foreign policy.
Right.
Saying that Beijing is looking at what's happening with the Russian invasion of Ukraine and taking notes about mistakes to avoid if or when China invades Taiwan. What do you think about that?
Yes, I read that article as well. No doubt they are taking notes. Now, there's two parts to that question. They're learning things, and what about Taiwan? So there's two halves to that.
Okay.
On the first one, what are they learning in terms of the military capacity of Russia to deal with anything major? That has not been a tested military for a very long time. Now they're tested, and they clearly were failing, and they're falling back on barbarous techniques to succeed. China is saying, well, we are going to lay in our supplies better. We're going to have better supply lines. We're going to diversify our economy. Remember, it's a much, much larger economy than Russia. So we will make it sanctions-proof by having such diversification. When the economy goes down, this isn't part of that article, when the economy goes down and is under some threat, we will do something good. We will invest in infrastructure, which in the long term will further our development, modernization, and let us emerge from the century of humiliation from which we suffered from the West. So that's one half of it. The other half of it, of course, is what lessons are they learning in terms of Taiwan?
Okay. When we come back, Donald Trump. We will talk about how we're going to talk about Donald Trump. Again, Professor, we're going to talk about Donald Trump again.
I want to talk a little more about Taiwan, then move on to that.
Okay, all right, yeah. When we come back, Rob Snow Show, City News.
I'm Emily Bertrand, the owner of Royale Equestrian Center. This is Diamond. She's a 10-year-old thoroughbred. She used to be a racehorse and then made the transition to a riding horse. She loves jumping, and she's used for our more advanced students. So we started the farm 14 years ago with my mom and brother. My brother was actually driving by one day and saw the sign, and we applied. There were 60 applicants, and we got it. When we first started, there was not very much here, so our property's about 25 acres, and there was just this 100-year-old barn. And from there, we built onto it. We fixed up one stall at a time, one paddock at a time. We added one horse at a time, and slowly it built into what it is today. Every year, we're improving and trying to continue to build. And most recently, we added 2 shed row barns this year. I love horses. I've been obsessed with horses since I was a little girl. The first time I got to ride, I was 4 years old, and I just loved it. My mom thought it was going to be a phase, and that phase never ended. I kept riding all through high school, and then eventually, started Royale Equestrian Center. It was my dream to always own a farm and to build a place that I could share my passion for horses with others and do the same thing for the kids that the horses did for me. So I absolutely love it. It's a dream come true. COVID hit, that was challenging. I was pretty stressed, especially the first few months, trying to figure out how are we going to navigate all of this. Our business is based on people coming in. We don't make much revenue if there's nobody coming in to ride. So that was really challenging. And then the other aspect of it was how are we going to care for all these horses if we're fully shut down and there's no income coming in. So we worked really hard. Some of our team were so kind to actually just come in and volunteer and help us out. And we made through it. We got through it. It's been hard and a lot of work, but it's also shown us how resilient we can be. So I'm happy with how we're coming out of COVID. Hopefully this is, we're nearing the end of all the shutdowns, but we've survived it, and now we're starting to thrive again, which is great. So we have a great team. We have about 14 coaches, and then we have all our regular barn staff. We have our maintenance manager and crew, and if it weren't for them, we wouldn't be able to do this. It takes a huge amount of people, and then we also have a volunteer program. The volunteer program, it helps with us, especially with our beginner program, so they help with tacking up the horses and caring for the horses when we're really busy, and then they also get to gain some work experience. We take co-op students on. We're quite a busy and vibrant place, and it takes a lot of people to make it work, even through to behind the scenes from our accountants, my family, who are always stepping in to help out. It takes a small village.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
We're back with Professor Elliot Tepper from Carleton University for our weekly look at world news. And pick up, if you will, Professor, I didn't mean to cut you off, on Taiwan.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, one of the big questions facing all of us is the one you ask, which is, what is China learning? What lessons do they draw from what they see in Ukraine and the behavior of the Russians? The Taiwanese are saying, here's the lesson they're learning. A motivated, highly organized, and by the way, militarily capable country can't be invaded. So the Russians had better have learned that lesson, that they can't invade us. What the Chinese may have, however, have heard, and this is the big question, is if you brandish the fact you're a nuclear power, can you really get away with almost anything? What else are they learning from having watched the Russians in terms of their tactics and behavior? So a very big question is the one you raised, Rob. What are the Chinese learning?
Okay. Look, let's talk about Trump. I thought after January 6th, that's it. There's no way he could ever come back from that. But it seems not only has he come back from that, he has, I will say, essentially taken over the Republican Party. That it's not the Republican Party anymore. It's the Trump Party. There's a story this week, Trump as modern day party boss, and it talks about every Republican candidate who has any ambition to get elected in the midterm elections it sounds like they're making a pilgrimage now to Mar-a-Lago. That it's become quote, a shadow GOP headquarters. Trump has raised more money than the Republican National Committee has raised. A bigger political war chest than the Republican National Committee. And they are all seeking his favor and, most importantly, his endorsement. What do you think about that, Professor?
Let's remind ourselves what we're talking about here. It's where you opened up the conversation. This is an American president who refused to admit defeat, that he had been defeated in an open and free and fair election, and refused to leave power. He wanted to hold on to power even though he lost an election. The passage of power from one party to another, one president to another, is the core, the essence, resting on popular vote, of American democracy. So we now have a situation where the Republican Party is thoroughly under the thrall of this particular president, who was impeached twice, wasn't convicted, wasn't removed from power. But we have to keep in mind the assault on democracy that we are seeing in front of us, and the Republican Party is, as you pointed out, falling into line with this. Apparently he's endorsed something like 150 candidates. He's actively involved in primaries all across the country. Mm-hmm. The control he has over the Republican base and the levers of power within the Republican Party really suggests that the Republican Party is more interested in power than in democracy going forward.
Yeah, it's interesting on the election. He still hasn't gotten over that. He did an interview with Piers Morgan. Winner of one season, actually. Piers Morgan won the Celebrity Apprentice one season, if you can imagine. And there's going to be an interview airing on the 25th, I believe. And so they leaked a little bit of it. And do you have that clip, David? Let's play that.
Okay, Piers, I'm ready.
A former president in denial.
I'll be completely in denial. I think I'm a very honest man, much more honest than you, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
It was a free and fair match. You lost.
Only a fool would think.
You think I'm a fool?
I do now. Yeah.
With
Excuse me.
Okay. With respect,
the legislature.
The hard evidence.
Excuse me.
The most explosive interview of the year.
I don't think you're real.
I realize I'm not like.
Very decisive. Let's finish up the interview.
Morgan versus Trump.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, it's made for TV, and apparently Trump storms off, but it's. Piers Morgan says it was a free and fair election, and Trump fires back. Only a fool would believe that.
Yes.
Right.
And
so he's still doing this thing. Yeah.
You referred to this, him because he's now the party boss, and a lot of references being made to Tammany Hall. Mm-hmm. All this goes back to a time in American politics when power really rested in the hands of bosses. The Tammany Hall was the headquarters of Boss Tweed in the late 1700s into the 1800s, well into the 1800s and 1900s even, where you could exchange patronage to voters and exchange for their votes and then control the party machinery. And he's saying, as long as I count the votes, this is a cartoon, what are you going to do about it? As long as I count the votes, what are you going to do about it? And the Republicans are putting the legislatures, dominated by Republicans all across America, are putting into effect means to be sure that they cannot be told, next time the president calls and says, I need a certain number of votes to win, he's going to get them. So the assault really on democracy here is happening in front of us, and the contest for the future of democracy in America is part of that. The next nominee of the Republican Party will either be Donald Trump or somebody who's even more Trump than Trump, and that's the contest within that party.
Okay, we only have 90 seconds left here, so I think Le Pen in the French election is done. When Macron, I wouldn't call it a knockout blow, but when Macron said in the debate last night, you are speaking to your banker when you speak of Russia. That's the problem, Madame Le Pen. That's a killer line right there.
It is, except in Hungary and in Serbia, people even closer than she now says she is to Mr. Putin have won elections.
Wow.
And you can ask President Hillary Clinton about polls. So I agree with you. It looks like, this 10-point lead that Mr. Macron has had all along seems to be holding up. It seems to be going up a bit. She seems to be going down a bit as we enter into the vote on Sunday. But stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Okay. You're not writing it off yet. Okay. All right. Interesting. Well, will be something that we can react to when you join us next week, Professor. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Yep. From the Norman Patterson School of International Affairs, where he is Distinguished Senior Fellow. That is Professor Elliot Tepper. And that's our show. Back tomorrow right after the 9 o'clock news, covering all the big breaking news stories and gathering your views tomorrow during the Friday Free-for-All Talkback Hour. Always an adventure on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Weekdays 9 to noon on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley.
This program is brought to you by